Good evening, folks. Welcome back to another Monday night live stream. Hope everybody's well. Hope your weekend went very well. Hope you are having a lovely start of the week. And I'm sure some of you have now got kids on holiday as well. So I hope that's not going too bad either. So, how is everybody? What are you up to tonight? What have you been up to at the weekend? Who's been painting some new stuff? Who's kind of got a hobby on the back burner for a little bit while the weather's better and you're kind of enjoying a bit of sunshine? I know my paintings took a little bit of a backseat lately, I must admit, with the nice weather and the little one being off. But yeah, I'm raring to get back into it. So, let's see who we have in the chat this evening. I should also say as well, I don't know if everyone can see it, but I found that there was a button to put a poll in the chat. So I decided to put a poll in the chat tonight. Just saying you can only pick one. Are you more of a painter, a player, or a collector? So if you can see the poll, get in there and drop a vote. We'll go back later on when we're chatting about the miniatures and stuff, and we'll see what the vast majority of people are. It's kind of even at the moment. We've had about 41 votes so far, and it's roughly painter is winning at 46% of the vote, 37% are players, and 17% are collectors. But I'm sure that'll change as we get more votes in now. So let's have a little look in the chat and see who we've got. So. That's how I make that disappear. Of course, that poll is now covering up some of the chat people. So if you're in early, I apologise. I can see from Walkabout Games, hello to you, buddy. How you doing? Blizzards, hello to you as well. Type 40 Tardis, good evening. RG said he's finally got here tonight. Hello, mate. Yellow Belly Tabletop, hello to you as well. Christian Reeves, hello, sir. How you doing, my friend? Nice to see you. What does that one say? I can't. Is that asking me to put? I'm sorry. I'm just trying to read something. There's a little thing just flashed up on my screen, and it said like this would be a good time to do something. And I've never seen this before. Let's see what YouTube are playing with the live streams. I just need to move that across the screen a little bit. Oh, now would be a good time to insert an advert. Pretty sure it wouldn't be a good time to insert an advert. Tony Oates, good evening to you. Super Pumpkin Man, good afternoon. J-Bot, nice to see you as well. John Estel said he's starting his Abyssal Dwarfs tonight. Nice one, mate. Hope you're well. Luke Pryor, nice to see you as well. Mark Berracloth, Anna's in from Red Rose Wargaming. Good evening. We've got Paul Taylor, says can't wait to find more models to throw my money at. I'm not here to sell them to you, mate. I'm merely here to show people the wide myriad of opportunities that are out there. Federico, good evening to you. Major Tom Ed, he said he's on the phone tonight, so harder to chat. Oh, I'm sure you'll find a way, mate. We got Coxkian as well. Good evening, mate. He said he's Airbrush Prime and he's backlog. Silver MKI said he's interested in what other gaming systems are named after weapons other than Warhammer. Yeah, Warhammer itself is not very technically sort of. It might have been registered as a trademark these days, but the Warhammer isn't necessarily. Tasty Brain Drain, good evening. Colin Wakeland, we got Warren Jones in as well. Where's that? Just jumped off the top of my screen there. Where are we up to? Graham Rigg, hello. Yoakum, good evening to you, buddy. Skullduggery's in. Broken Legion of Gamers, hello. Bloggy, how you doing, mate? Long time no speak. Holy Ghost Wargaming, good evening to you. Clyde Dashing, good afternoon, evening. Mark said he's been to a beer festival. I saw the pictures, mate. I hope you had a good time. Tasty Brain Drain said he saw the poll and voted. It's the first time I've seen it. I don't know if it's new. I don't know if it's just the first time I've seen it. But yes, it was nice. I thought I'll use it and see how it works. Paul said it's definitely been too hot to paint. Need to start the challenge this week, though. My model that I've been painting is on the table here. Well, it'll be part of explaining about the myriad of other things that are out there tonight, but we'll get to that. VJ, good morning to you, matey. How you doing? Type 40 Tardis is saying he's painting minis 81 to 88 for the month. I don't think I do that many a year. I think, to be fair, this year I've done quite a bit. I did the 2 armies from the start, I said, for Firefight, which definitely got my average numbers up, I think. Neil Barton, good evening, mate. He said, I'm a crap player and a reasonable painter. There's nothing wrong with being a crap player, mate. It's about having fun. You don't have to win the games. Just like when you're painting, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be fun. John says, it seems strange you being sat there on your Todd. I know, mate. 3 weeks on the trot. I've had a guest with me. It's been really nice. When tonight I feel a bit lonely now. So you lot will have to just keep chatting to me and keep me going. Vijay says, is that what you want to be or what you end up doing? I'm not really sure what that was now. I can't remember. Oh, sorry. It's what you're doing. It's what, sorry, I'm assuming you mean the vote. It's what do you do? What's the reality? Because most people, like some people say, oh well, I like to paint and play, but then some people who say that will say, well, I paint like sort of 3 or 4 days a week, but I play a game maybe once every 6 months. You're not really a painter and a player if that's the case. It's more about what do you really do. Keith Spidle, hello to you. Neil Barton, hello. He says he lives in Brisbane. He's on holiday in Vancouver, and he's caught COVID and isolated in a hotel for 10 days. Neil, my sympathies go out to you, mate. I hope you're okay. Wayne Hayward, good evening to you. Danny Mack, nice to see you. Mitchell Bridges is in. Griffin says, greetings from Colorado. I like that. We've got all corners of the globe here today. Can you say corners of the globe? Technically, I don't think there's a corner to a globe, is there? But we know what I mean. Oh, it's flying. Plenty of chat tonight. Shout out to the Springfield Gamers, says Neil Barton. Joel Anderson, good evening. Austin Thornhill's doing some Star Wars Legion models today. Jez Hunt, hello fella. Skulldogger says, I set up an airbrush spray booth. Excited to start using it. I like using my airbrush, I'll be honest. I quite enjoy it. Joel said he's painting up his ships for Stars of Arcarius. Now the Kickstarter has arrived. Not one I'm familiar with, mate. Bruce Young says, Slanty, mate. Same to you, mate, but I'm on the water, to be fair, buddy. VJ's on the green tea. Jess says he's painting his slaying minis. Luke's recovering from the gym. Take it easy, mate. You're hurting your wrist with them kind of weights. Simon Dave says, hey, Andy and chat. All your Kings of War chats finally converted me. Just signed up to my first tournament and got to paint lots of halflings. Well done, mate. Yellow Belly Tabletop, he's hoping to finish this 30 model batch paint for Assassin's Creed tonight. It's outstayed, it's welcome. Sometimes they can get a bit like that, mate, can't they? Clyde Dashin said he's working on Studio Miniatures Henry, also known as Indiana Jones. I'm not familiar with them, mate. I'll have to check them out. Feral Games says, been collecting and painting minis for Silver Bayonet. You should check it out. I've heard quite a lot about it, mate, to be fair. I don't know anything about the game, but I've heard loads of people talking about Silver Bayonet. Tony says, who's this bloke? Where's Annie? Yeah, you got the wrong channel, mate. I think you needed Annie's channel. Blizzard says, between the weather and his health, he's not managed to pick up a brush yet this month. Well, I hope you're on the mend soon, mate. Yeah, Tasty Brain Trains, I think having a poll's a good thing, can definitely be used to generate discussion. Yeah, like I say, I didn't even know it was a thing, so there we go. John, good evening to you. He says, is it cool down enough for you yet? To be honest, mate, it's still quite warm and still quite sticky at the minute. Like, it was up like over, say, 23, 24 degrees again today. But it has absolutely chucked it down this afternoon. So hopefully that kind of clears the air a little bit. It's getting a bit it's a bit humid, I would say. It's like, even in here, like, here's pretty well insulated. So it's kind of kept most of the heat out over the last few days. So it's been okay being in here. But even this is kind of starting to warm up a little bit now. I'm having to keep the doors open to kind of get some air in. It's also letting the heat in and stuff like that. So it's still a bit hot and sticky, mate. Sumberland says, hope she's doing well. He says he's working on some dwarves for a new warband for Rangers of Shadowdeep tonight. Nice one. Jess is saying Silver Bayonet Ace. So somebody tell me, is Silver Bayonet like a historical thing? Or is it like a fantasy thing? I don't know. I just keep hearing how good it is. James Zorm, good evening to you, mate. He says, hope you're doing well. I'm very well, thanks for asking. George, good evening to you as well. James said he's mostly a painter, might sneak in a game a few times a year. Yeah, I think a lot of people are a bit like that. That I think they would class themselves as a gamer, but actually if they were being honest with themselves, I think maybe they play less games than they paint, definitely. And I guess anybody who plays games will generally still paint a lot. But I guess it's probably some people will be just painting to play games, and gaming is the main point of their hobby. Some people will be painting because they really enjoy painting and game when they can, kind of thing. Jesse and Rangers of Shadow Deep's awesome too. Yeah, again, mate, I've heard that but not played it. Martin Dixon says backlog larger than expected lifespan must be a collector. I put collector because I think some people generally just like to buy a lot of stuff, if I'm honest. Like, I think even they would admit, if they were honest with themselves, that they buy more than they would, than they ever get round to painting. And actually it's just the enjoyment from owning some stuff that they like. Silver says, I'm working away next week, so hope to paint 2 large demons he 3D printed. Did some initial airbrushing at the weekend, but young child eats time and biscuits. Alexandros, good evening. He says, greetings from Greece. hello to you, buddy. Type 40 Toilet says he's super curious which games you're going to cover tonight. Don't think about, I mean, there are a lot of games involved here, but don't just think of it about games. Because when I said, like, in the main kind of title or the sort of thumbnail for tonight, is that there's so much more than Warhammer. My point is that, like, and it leads into the poll a little bit as well. The amount of people that say, oh, well, I buy the Warhammer stuff because, you know, like, kind of I want to feel part of a community or whatever. There's a lot of people buy it and still never play the game. And there's a lot of people buy it and don't read the lore and that kind of stuff. They almost just buy it as the default thing to buy. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. Yes, there's lots of games and we can talk about games as well. But I want this to appeal to people who game, people who paint, and people that collect. That no matter what your tastes are, there are stuff out there for everyone. And actually just seeing some of the stuff that's out there, like if you're somebody like if Tony Howell, oh, I've just saw his name there, Tony Howell in the chat, doesn't really play games at all, just loves paint stuff from all kind of sort of weird and wonderful kind of creators, I mean like manufacturers of miniatures, and just kind of paints what takes his fancy. And I think a lot of people actually, if they just kind of, if they were honest with themselves and said, actually, all I ever do really is paint minis, they wouldn't necessarily just get tied down to, like, you know, just painting Space Marines, for example. So that's what I'm kind of covering tonight. The fact that there are some beautiful minis out there and such different themes, and it's not just, oh, here's another sci-fi game or here's your traditional fantasy game. There's so much other stuff out there. Super Pumpkin Man says it's a nice 94 degrees here in West Texas. I think the hottest we got up to last week on Tuesday was we were about 36 degrees, I think, here. It was a little bit hotter down south. But actually it wasn't like it's more the humidity. It's just really hot and sticky. Basically it's quite humid here, so even though the temperatures dropped a little bit, it's still quite humid actually, and whilst the heat was not very nice to be that hot and we're not used to it and we don't have aircon and all that kind of rubbish, it's more just the fact that it's just constantly a bit sort of hot and sticky really. Ed says, kind of disagree with that. I spend more time painting, but I play weekly at least, and I enjoy playing far more than painting, so I consider myself a player. Yeah, and that's fair enough, mate. You consider yourself a player. I mean, you're saying you play weekly. Anybody that plays kind of on a weekly basis, I would suggest, is probably a player and are probably painting to play their games with. For all they can still enjoy the painting, I would suggest if you're playing on a weekly basis, playing is the main part of your hobby. But I think a lot of people say that they're a player, but probably play maybe like sort of once every 2 or 3 months or something like that. J-Bot says trying to get his Vikings painted and introducing a mate to Saga this weekend. Nice one. Griffin said I'm truly not a painter, hard with only one eye, but I love to play. Current games, Firefight, Dead Zone, wanting to play one-page rules. Yeah, I mean, like I say, mate, if painting's not your bag for whatever reason it might be, then a player, vote for the player bit. That's it. I'm just interested because I've got my gut feelings about things, but I want people to be kinder. You know, be honest with yourself. I know what you might want to be. Like, you might want to be a painter, but you might pick up the brush once a month kind of thing, or you might just paint the odd model when you need to add something to your army kind of thing. Holy Ghost Wargaming says everything from Joe McCulloch is great. He delivers. I'll be perfectly honest, I have never played a Joe McCulloch game. I'm fully aware of Joe's stuff. And he did email me recently, actually, and we've had a little bit of a conversation going backwards and forwards. And I think we're going to get him on the channel at some point for a bit of an interview and a bit of a chat about game design and stuff. But I'll be honest, I've never played one of his games. Mad Moderator says living in Swiss Alps now. He's 750 metres above sea level. It's been too hot and humid here this summer as well. Luke's saying he's a baller. Snowball says you wouldn't call a gardener a waterer, even though that's what they do most of the time. I think that's kind of splitting hairs a little bit. What I mean is the hobby itself is, well, I guess the other side of it then is if think of a gardener, right? There are people who have a garden, but all they're really doing is mowing the lawn. So like I'm going to do some gardening, and they might just go out and cut the grass, or they might have kind of sort of rose bushes and plants everywhere that they need to kind of prune and look after and water and feed and stuff. It's more to do with the fact is like, the hobby is an accumulation of everything, but I would suggest that most people probably spend more time, either they have their favourite part or they have the one that they spend more time putting into, and that's how I'm kind of breaking it down. I mean, I'm sure that most people will do a little bit of everything. Like, we all collect stuff by the sheer nature that we buy it, but that's not the main purpose of what you do, is kind of what I'm getting at. Let's have a little look. Yellow Belly says, if Burrows and Badgers doesn't get a mention, I'll be upset unless you cover Steam Forged Animal Adventures was the next best thing. I'll be honest, mate, neither of those things are in the list. So there you go. But what I should say is when I get to the list, and I've got a long list of stuff. When I get to the list of stuff and I go through and I show you all the different, because I've got all the web pages open to kind of go through and stuff. There will be things that I miss off either just by forgetting about them because there's so much stuff out there, or stuff that I'm not aware of. So yeah, at some point, yeah, I'm sure people will kind of like, there'll be things that is your favourite stuff if you like. There'll be stuff that is good for you. I think Burrows and Badgers make some great miniatures. For me personally, I'm not really into animal stuff. It's not like I haven't got any pets. I'm not like kind of an animal lover as such in that respect. So that kind of stuff doesn't necessarily kind of sort of pique my interest as much as some other things. Tizzy Brain Drain says he's in the low 90s there, but it's been raining the last few hours as well, so the temperature's dropped a bit. John saying it's kind of a good thing he's got such a small group that only plays a few different games, all bad depending on how you look at it. Snowball says, I think Joe's stuff is a little bland. I guess it depends on what you're looking for, mate. Like, a lot of people who pick up those kind of games are looking for something a little bit more simple, a little bit more straightforward. So I think it depends upon personal taste. Not everything is for everybody, obviously, yeah. Where was that one? I just moved off there. Is it Apollinois? I apologise if I've butchered your name there, mate. It says just made the decision, and both Infinity Military Order starter sets, old and new, found them at a good price. Nice one. Just as you pick up Burrows and Badgers rules in a charity shop. Dog Hardwood Miniatures, good evening. Says, I want to enjoy painting more, but my love is sculpting. I guess it's funny because I never think of... Hello, by the way, welcome to the chat. I never think of sculpting as part of the hobby, but I guess it is in the same way. Kit bashing is part of the hobby, and building miniatures is part of the hobby and stuff like that. But I always forget that kind of side of things. I guess because it's less prevalent, or I hear about it less, maybe. Carla saying Burrows and Badgers is so cool. Vigi says, considering I haven't painted before I went overseas, but I played multiple games with Andy, I guess I can change it to a player. There you go, mate. And he says, does it count? I would say I'm a hobby admirer. I think being a bit of a hobby admirer, mate, is part and parcel of it as well, to be fair. Jez says, Joe's a legend. Nice chap. We'll have to play something from him when I'm back home from this job. Well, to be fair, I did have a good chat with Joe, and we emailed backwards and forwards a bit. He sent me over the rules for Frostgrave, which I've not had a chance to read through yet, just the digital versions. And I said that we'll sort of hook back up and have a chat in the future. So I'd like to obviously know a bit more about his stuff before I chat to him. I think that's only fair. But he's one of those people who like... I'm fully aware of him, and I'm aware of all the games he's made, and I'm aware of the praise that his games get. I've just never really played with gamers who play those games, and it's like, I've said this before about a lot of kind of mini agnostic games, and I'm aware there's miniature lines for things like Stargrave and Frostgrave now, but when they first came out, they certainly wasn't. Those kind of games, they tend to work best if you've got a small group of players who you play with on a regular basis. Because you kind of you play those things together, you learn the rules together. Where I find things like, let's say a Marvel Crisis Protocol, for example, I can buy a Marvel Crisis Protocol set and go anywhere where there's people playing that game and get a game. So there's that's one of the reasons that sort of mini agnostic stuff never really crossed my path. I don't have like a regular set of gaming friends. It's one of the reasons there's not a lot of kind of gameplay stuff on my channel, is because I don't have somebody that I play with like on a weekly basis, for example. I don't have that one person that we just always play games, or that group of 3 or 4 sort of folks who I play games with. I tend to do more kind of pick-up type stuff, or I'll kind of, if I'm playing a particular game for a while, I'll go to a certain club where they play that game. So yeah, that's why mini agnostic stuff, and hence Joe's games, haven't really been on my radar so much in the past. Ted says, long time no see. Nice to see you, Ted. Hope you're well. John says, that's me, definitely a gardener. I mow the lawn occasionally and hack other bits. I'm definitely not a gardener, mate. That's my wife's sort of passion, not mine, mate. Simon Davis says, is Sludge by Joe McCulloch? I've not heard of Sludge, mate, so I couldn't say. Christian sharing the link there for the Patreon as well. Yes, folks, thank you very much to those who have joined the Patreon recently. We've had a nice little kind of increase in numbers after my Games Workshop is killing my channel video. So that was really cool to see. So thank you to all the new Patreons. And yeah, welcome to any new ones that want to join as well. Let me just, in fact, that little list in the top corner has got some of the folks' names. I think I shrunk it down last week when we had 2 heads on the screen. So let's make it a little bit bigger so those folks get their moment in the sun as well. Let's have a little look here. Leiperd says he's done more painting recently, but collects 2000 AD related minis first and foremost. Then get other minis, mostly fantasy, that catch his eye for painting and potential homebrew dungeon crawling. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, there's definitely kind of buying the bits that you need. I think like D&D players or role players, for example, tend to pick and choose where they buy their minis from because they want a mini that looks a certain way that will fit the aesthetic of their characters or their non-player characters in a game. Where I think gamers are sometimes a little bit blinkered, and especially gamers who are just used to buying and painting and playing Warhammer, for example. Bloggy said barely gets the chance to play, but that's his favourite part of the hobby, so voted for gaming. I get that, mate, but I guess what I'm trying to kind of ascertain really is, because my good feeling is, I think the vast majority of people are probably painters first and foremost, because A, you can do it solo. I know you can play solo, but most people don't. It takes up the vast majority of the time, like of hobby wise, and then we all get to game when we can. There are some lucky people who get to play 2 or 3 times a week. Some people play kind of every weekend. Some people play maybe a night during the week and play on a weekend, or they have folks coming to visit. I'm very envious of those folks. But I think the vast majority of people are painters. Hence why when I always do these kind of topics, it's one of the reasons why I say kind of like open your horizons. If you're predominantly kind of just sort of buying Games Workshop miniatures because you're in that kind of rut of just always buying what you've always bought, even though you're never playing the games with them, I'm not suggesting don't do it. It's your money, you buy the things you love. But like, just be aware of some of the amazing stuff that's out there. There's other stuff that when you see it might be like, oh, that would be amazing to paint. I would love to kind of paint something like that. Dave says, I got back into the hobby with Warhammer Underworlds, dropped it because of GW release strategy, fell in love with Moonstone, played Confrontation and Rack-A-Lot 20 years ago, like the skirmish format, I guess. I think a lot of people like skirmish games, mate. Mark says, yeah, Moonstone for sure, great minis. Ed saying, I actually dislike the term the hobby. There are 3 linked hobbies: gaming, painting and modelling. Most of us do 2 of the 3 at least to varying degrees. Yeah, I don't disagree, mate. I don't disagree. I think the hobby is just the catch-all term. It's like the tabletop hobby. It's all of the different aspects of it. The building, the painting, the list building. It's all of those different aspects. But I think that generally what happens is there's one that kind of dominates your hobby, if you like. Like for me, painting, I would say, is definitely the stronger part of it. It's the one I probably enjoy the painting because I can just do it straight away. I do enjoy playing games, but it's something that needs to be kind of organised and planned and that kind of stuff. Vijay says, also awesome minis are a matter of taste. Some people love hand sculpted, others don't. Some like cutesy, others don't. Yeah, exactly, mate. And I think that's exactly the same for it. Doesn't matter who makes them, whether it's Games Workshop, whether it's Mantic, whether it's anybody. It's like value when it comes to how much things cost. Some people think something's expensive. Some people think it's good value. Everything when it comes to art and kind of aesthetic is definitely very much personal taste. So I'm not suggesting like all of the miniatures tonight. I'm not saying that I love them all, but from a quality perspective, from a variations perspective, from different aspects of kind of what might be tempting to different people, I'm trying to kind of cover a lot of different bases. John said he finally got a copy of Stargrave and he was destined to own a few weeks back. He'd 400 miles away from where he lived. This is a year after I passed it up the first time for a box of figures. There you go, mate. Super Pumpkin Man says, honestly, the last 2 years have been more of a painter, but I would play 2 or 3 times a month before. Yeah, I think for a lot of people, mate, painting's been dominant. Apollonius says, I'm a collector, although where I live the community is very small, and play Warhammer. That didn't stop me collecting Wild West Exodus, Song of Ice and Fire, Warzone, Resurrection, Trollbloods, and now Infinity. It's a good mix of stuff, mate. Silver saying the hobby attempts to unite and herd the cats of gamers, painters, and model makers. I think the element is when we talk about, I think, to be fair, I think it's a GW coined kind of phrase, because I don't think people called it the hobby in the past. I think it was just a hobby, as in how playing golf is a hobby, or photography is a hobby, or fishing is a hobby type thing. I think it's the way they've coined it to almost pull everything into one place. So, like, you know, it doesn't matter if you like to paint, if you like to sculpt, if you like to play games, whatever. We sell everything you need, kind of thing. And I think they've almost coined that as a catch-all term. But it's just shorthand. It's not meant to be kind of like sort of. It's not meant to be sort of controversial or anything. Zingbo said he voted as a collector because he was being honest. I need to address the balance between purchasing and painting. I think a lot of people do, mate, to be fair. Jez is saying, yeah, he doesn't like crunchy systems, so he likes McCulloch stuff. His games have a hint of a background, and so I enjoy the freedom, the kind of world build. I think it's something that we came up upon when we were talking about miniature agnostic games a while ago as well, was that a lot of times people like the fact that they can do their own world building and almost use that mini agnostic game as the framework to play a game in their own world. Other people, probably more like me a little bit, like to kind of get intrigued by the world that's being created in a game, for example, or in a game system, and then want to play games within that world. So it's almost like it's like me reading a book or watching a film and thinking, oh, like I want to read another book about that, or I want to watch another film. Is there any more films in that series, kind of thing? I guess I'm a bit like that with games. I will find a game that I like the background, I like the characters, I like the sculpting style, I like the artwork, and then that's what kind of intrigues me into the game. Let's have a little look at some more here as well. There's a lot of chat, but it's jumping around. Fiji says, I'm guessing the last games you played were the ones we played. They were the last miniatures games I played, mate, but I've played plenty of board games since then, to be fair. Lou and I have been playing some board games this weekend. So, so I've played more games, but I haven't played any miniatures games since then. Monster Craft says, I play games maybe once a month or every other month. Hello, by the way, welcome to the chat. I think it's a thing that we kind of forget sometimes, and it's not about sort of gatekeeping or saying, oh, well, you have to play every week to be a gamer kind of thing. That's not what I'm trying to do. I just think that sometimes we as kind of people as hobbyists, as tabletop hobbyists, if you like, I think we think that we're kind of like, we think we play games more often than we do, but if we actually kind of sort of looked at it, we could probably play games maybe 6 times a year or something like that, even maybe a little bit more if you go to an event or something like that, but I think we probably play less than we give ourselves credit for. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think sometimes it's, and this is what I've said before about, like, there's people saying, oh, well, I only play a Warhammer because I know I can get a game of it, and it's like, well, how many games do you play? And it's like, oh, I play once every 3 months or something like that. So it's like, so you're spending all of your money and all of your time painting stuff just for 4 games a year, kind of thing, and you're not that, you don't like it that much. You're only doing it because it's the only game you can get a game of. Those are the things where I want to kind of just say to people, look, if you're only playing 3 or 4 times a year, buy the stuff you love. Like, they do something for you, not just to try and fit in with this crowd of people that you see 4 times a year, kind of thing. Let me scroll down a little bit. Ed saying his wife's a gardener. I'm the manual labourer. Yeah, my garden is definitely my wife's thing. When we moved here, we've got quite a nice big garden. And it was a bit of it was the garden of a retired couple. It was all rose bushes and very much heavy maintenance type stuff. It's a lot more kind of decking and grass these days. But yeah, my wife is definitely the gardener in our house. RG says he's a gamer. If you have the chance, I would always play rather than paint. I'll be honest, mate, I would like to play more than I do. I just, don't always get the opportunity. And he's saying painting is a necessary evil. See, I actually enjoy the painting. I first got into tabletop stuff through painting, and learning to play the games was almost a consequence of I have a lot of painted minis. Maybe I should kind of see if I can use them and get like a double use out of them, if you like. Yeah, RG says, I cook food so I can eat it. I love the end result, not do I enjoy the cooking. I'm exactly the same way, mate. When I lived on my own, I'd be quite happy with ready meals and stuff like that. If it took me longer to cook the food than it did to eat it, like that to me felt like wasted time. My wife is a fantastic cook, and she enjoys that kind of preparation and making nice meals and stuff. I've got a mate who like loves kind of really taking his time and sort of marinating meats and kind of barbecuing and slow cooking and all that kind of stuff. And whilst I can appreciate a fantastic meal, and I do appreciate the effort that people put into it, it's not something I get any enjoyment from. It's in an awful lot of role players use Hero Forge to build character models. Yeah, I've saw that, mate. I think it's one of the ways that kind of, I guess things like, what they called, the kind of cheap miniatures that everybody gets. I forget their name now, but the kind of single piece plastic things that everybody seems to get for D&D. Somebody will tell me in the chat in about 5 minutes when I get to it. I think that's where they kind of fit into that kind of stuff. VG says, speaking of Patreon, have you considered doing a monthly Patreon only live stream like Adam does? Could be a nice little perk. Weren't you planning to rejig the tiers? I was planning to do it, mate, yeah, and I just haven't basically kind of settled on what I want to do with it yet. So at some point I will rejig it. I'm just not 100% convinced one way or the other which is the best way to do it at the minute. But when I get to it, mate, I will have a look at it. Let's have a little look. Yeah, Monstercraft says literally D&D is agnostic to even using models at all. Yeah, exactly, mate. It definitely is. Clyde says, yeah, way more work done in the painting field. Only getting a stray game of BattleTech or Pulp Alley once every once and again. Yeah. Barry Kleiber, hello, mate. How are you doing? Yellow Belly says there are a lot to be said for joining and supporting a local gaming club if you can find one. They're often difficult things to keep going for organisers, and they need all the support they can get. They can, mate, but I think there's also an element of gaming clubs, certainly in my experience, also have to kind of be welcoming to all types of gamers, because some of the clubs that I've been to in the past can end up just being tournament practice places, and actually, unfortunately, like some places pretty much play one kind of game, and if you don't play that game, like, you kind of don't fit in. So there's mixes to it. It's like if you can sort of find a local group or sort of folks that you want to play with, and then play at a local gaming group and support them, then absolutely kind of it brings in more players and stuff. But I think it's a two-way street as well. Like sometimes a gaming group can just be a collection of people who like to play very competitively and meet at the same place every week. So there's a real mix there. Silverson, he's printed some Hero Forge models for someone. They were okay, but there's loads of free files out there. Yeah, you're not wrong with that as well, mate. There is a lot of stuff out there now as well. Superpunk Man saying, yes, some of the most expensive commissions I make are when people ask me to make custom RPGs minis out of 40k or AOS. Let's have a little look here. John says, personally, I really like the dual aspect for me, playing and painting. Chill time on my own and fun with mates. Yeah, I agree, mate. I would agree with that as well. I think I'd quite like to do painting sessions with other folks as well. I think it'd be nice to sit and paint together. It's not something I've ever really done, other than when we've done the kind of like the painting streams and stuff like that. But I think there's an element of like painting in groups can be quite nice as well. Yeah, Ed's saying just what I was saying there before as well. The hobby is, or at least was, very much a GW term. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I was getting at before, mate. Yeah, and Knowles' miniatures, that's the ones I was thinking of. Thank you very much, folks. I'm kind of skipping down the chat here a little bit just to kind of catch up. ER910, nice to see you in the chat, buddy. Carl saying, I get no games. I love collecting miniatures I like from mostly indie producers. Tony saying his son opened a board game cafe last year, so I play board games a couple of times a week and spend a lot of time watching him paint. And Robert Bowman saying, I'm a painter. I would love to be more of a player, but the community just isn't here. I think we've talked about this on previous live streams as well. Sometimes you have to be the you have to be the one that grabs the bull by the horn sometimes with that kind of stuff. You'd be surprised that there's other people dotted around who are probably sitting in a very similar position saying, oh, there's nobody around here kind of thing. Like, remember, you only need to find one person who wants to play the same game, and then you've got a community at that point. Let's have a little look down the chat here. Highland Pharaon, hello there, says, just bought the Warlord Epic Waterloo box set to try something completely different to 40k. Got that new hobby feeling, excited. That's a nice one, mate. Reaper Bones, that was the other ones I was thinking of, mate. Yeah, thank you very much. It was Reaper. Thank you to everybody who's... that's where I'm up to in the chat now, folks. I'll scroll down a little bit more here. There's some new names in as well. Hello, Ariel. How you doing, buddy? Over in Florida there. Martin Dickinson, good evening. John saying he saw a review a couple of weeks ago for a new Osprey title, Castles in the Sky, and it's what I've wanted all my life without knowing. I saw the title of it, but I've got no idea what the game's about. Robert saying, I'm trying to build a one-page rules community locally. I hope that gets some traction. I would love to play more. Warhammer's barrier of entry killed our local community. It's one of the things that, like, I keep hearing about one-page rules, about how great it is and how it's brilliant for getting people into the hobby because you can use Warhammer miniatures and stuff. The fact that you can use Warhammer miniatures, for me, like, shouldn't be its selling point. Like, if people want to buy Warhammer miniatures, by all means buy Warhammer miniatures, but I don't think necessarily the fact that you can then use them in one-page rules is like, it's not growing the community. I don't think it's necessarily a great thing for the community. If it means more people play games because the rules are a little bit easier, then fine, but I don't see anybody kind of... I've said this before, and I think in our Patreon chat, I don't really see anybody telling me what's, like, about one-page rules, why it's so great. All I keep hearing is it's got alternate activation and you can use Warhammer minis, and, like, for me, that's like, well, that's pretty. That's 90% of games that's out there these days. VG says he tried to go to Board Games Cafe when he was in the UK. Got laughed out of drafts for turning up solo, and Bad Moon, I couldn't find a single solo playing. That's terrible, that, mate. Jim Street, hello. He says, as a good consumer, I collect hobbies. Miniatures is just a collection of overlapping hobbies: RPGs, wargaming, painting, 3D printing, and collecting cool looking stuff. I get that, mate. Yeah, VG is saying he'd love to open a board game cafe for a retirement, and would make sure to cater for solo games. I think if you think of a coffee shop, mate, and the amount of people that go to a coffee shop on their own for like a coffee, and just like, like maybe it's a bite to eat, it would make perfect sense to be catering to solo people as well. And then at some point, those solo people see other solo people and go, oh, would you like to play a game? Like, if you can't even keep them in there in the first place, like, you're kind of missing out there a little bit. Martin says, the feeling of opening a new tabletop box set, that miniatures smell. Hello, Samir, how you doing? Hello, Dan Kennedy as well. Nice to see you, mate. Annie's in as well from Bad Squirrel. Nice to see you, Annie. Mitchell saying Reaper holds a con in there. Dallas. I have heard that Reaper con. Punchy, hello, mate. It says, I think Conflict 47 looks great. Really curious about it. Vincent VT, good evening. Says Fireforge and WGA Wargames Atlantic, isn't it, have been really awesome lately. And Dark Heartwood says there's a big back and forth between one-page rules and something as insane as 2nd edition 40k. I want graphs and charts to reference with my tabletop games. See, I tell you what, mate, that fills me full of, like, dread. I like, the last thing I want is charts and like, kind of like tables and reference stuff. Like, and that's what's beautiful about all the different miniatures games, is there's something out there for everybody. But that literally fills me with dread. The last thing I want to be doing is putting my head in the book and kind of referencing all that stuff. Discourse Miniatures, hello there. So miniatures other than Warhammer, we talked about Age of Sigmar. Then I just thought we'd talk about Necromunda, and we talk about what else could we talk about? Well, we could talk about Lord of the Rings, couldn't we? Because I mean, there is only Games Workshop though, obviously. Ed saying, for me, one-page rules is, I hope, a way to use my accidental 40k army in a game I can actually stand to play. Yeah, and I get that. And everybody's saying about a more enjoyable rule set without taking away from the GW lore. The problem is that if people love the GW miniatures and they love the GW lore, then generally they're gonna just suck it up and play the GW games. For me, I'd rather the alternative not be people moving from Games Workshop into other stuff. I want the alternative to be like new people coming into tabletop gaming to be able to see that there's other stuff out there and then make an informed choice, not just have Games Workshop as the default choice. Because I think if your selling point is you can use Games Workshop models, then essentially what you've got is you're basically just saying, well, keep spending your money with Games Workshop, but you can play our games kind of thing. I like the fact that they do 3D printed stuff and they've got their own range of models and stuff, but I think the vast majority of people basically just use them as an easier way to play with GW stuff, but then keep buying the GW stuff, which then doesn't really grow the rest of the industry, if you like. Where are we up to? Discord says some Warcry news recently. Yeah, I watched the video today about the kind of the how to play video, and essentially what they've done is they've brought out a new rule book just to add in reactions, and then sell new books with the updated stats in to allow all the old stuff to have reactions and kind of points costs jiggling around. Feels like it's something that wasn't necessarily needed, but hey, if people like it, people like it. And he's saying my test casts for the cuddling alpaca family arrived last week. I saw that you'd been showing them off on your Sunday morning show. They look pretty cool. Oh yeah, Titanicus, don't forget that one. Paul says 1-page rules, it's just the way to play a different set of rules while still being able to buy GW miniatures if they're the ones you like. Yeah, I get that, but that's my point. Is that doesn't help the wider hobby. That just means keep giving Games Workshop your money. Keep the number one at number one by spending all your money with them, but just play with these rules kind of thing because they're easier to play. It doesn't really it still doesn't open people up to the wider hobby. Martin Dixon there saying 1-page rules aside, their 3D models are really solid, interesting designs. Yeah, I don't disagree with that, mate. Yeah, I don't disagree with that in the slightest. I think some of their stuff's fantastic, and it's in the list I'm going to go through now, actually. Discourse is saying, I think there's still a bit of change happening in the hobby. More and more people coming into wargaming through the D&D side of things, and games like Frostgrave and Relic Braid and Rangers of Shadow Deep. I think so. I mean, I think the fact that a lot of RPG folks who pick up lots of miniatures then maybe want something to kind of play their miniatures with. I saw recently, I think it was BlackJack Craft, it basically started playing, or maybe it was an old video I watched where he started to play Frostgrave, because basically what he had a group of folks that he plays D&D with on a regular basis. They can't all commit to the same date every single time, but some weeks maybe 2 or 3 of them can get there rather than like the whole party. So those 2 or 3 then use kind of some of the miniatures they have, and they play Frostgrave, for example. So I do think there's some crossover coming that way, but I also see a lot of people who just love painting who are just basically kind of the blinkers are on with Games Workshop stuff because that's what they've seen on the high street and that's what they keep buying. I think there is a change that you can feel it in the air a bit. Like I think the wider hobby has an opportunity to kind of branch out and reach out, and or when I say the wider hobby, the wider sort of miniature companies have an opportunity to break through, but it's a two-pronged attack. They have to be shouting from the rooftops as well to get their kind of products out there, and then there needs to be willing consumers, and then there needs to be people like from a gamer side of things or a painter side of things who are willing to kind of shout about it as well. And I'd like to think that I kind of, in my own kind of tiny small way, I play some part in that as well. Mitchell says, looking for minis compatible to Dead Zone. Rebs as the official boxes for that faction are hard to find. The Rebs are, the Rebs are kind of, yeah, I know what you mean, mate. The Rebs were a faction that was almost kind of shoehorned in just because there was minis from another Mantic game, really. I think the fact the Maison Labs models are starting to get a release now, it might suggest that the Rebs might be on their way soon as well. Leaf Hyatt says, board games have seen an explosion, so there's no reason mini games can't see something similar. I think the difference with board games, mate, is they are so much more accessible. you can go to a shop, you can buy a board game, you can take it home, you can unwrap it, and you can be playing it like within an hour or so, for example, just by the time you've read through the rules and stuff. Miniatures games take a lot more commitment. They generally take a lot more money as well. And I think it's quite hard to kind of, if you're not already interested in it, or you don't have that maybe artistic kind of leaning, for example, it can be quite difficult to break through a little bit. So I think they have an opportunity to grow, but I think board games are definitely an easier sell. Where was that one? Jabbercaster saying, I dabble with hand sculpting and writing my own rules until Girl Genius finally gets a war game. They did get an RPG finally, so that's something. Bad Squiddo Games, thank you very much for the donation there. I just come through on my screen. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Let's have a little look as well. Discourse is saying, I saw a Reddit thread the other day of someone asking how to get into wargaming, and 99% of people were recommending one-page rules of Frostgrave instead of diving into Warhammer, and it warmed my heart. The problem is people recommending one-page rules are recommending one-page rules because the assumption is, well, you'll have loads of Warhammer minis already. So if you're brand new to tabletop gaming, to wargaming, you've never played a wargame before, to me, one-page rules is not the entry point, because you either A, need to then go search into, well, where do I buy all these minis? And then you look online and you go, oh, one-page rules, it's all 3D printer stuff. Does that mean I've got to buy a 3D printer? So for me, one-page rules is not the entry point to war games. There are 100 other games out there that are probably the easier entry point to war games. Almost like the question almost should be, well, what kind of thing do you like? Are you into superhero stuff? Do you like sci-fi stuff? Do you like fantasy stuff? Do you like, what do you like, sort of, what kind of rules do you think you might like? Do you want something simple? Like, rather than recommending something like Frostgrave or one-page rules as the game for new gamers, I think almost kind of does a disservice, because like when I was a new gamer, if someone says to me, oh, you should try one-page rules, and I go online and I go, oh, the rules are free, that's pretty cool. Right, well, where do I buy the minis? Oh, well, they're all 3D printed stuff. You go, oh, so do I need to get a printer? And I go, oh, no, you can buy Games Workshop minis. If you buy Games Workshop's minis, then you can play this. Then I kind of look at Games Workshop minis and I go, bloody hell, they're expensive, aren't they? So I almost think that you end up getting pushed back the GW route if you suggest one-page rules as a route in. I think one-page rules is a good route out of Warhammer games, as a way to kind of expand people's horizons into, look, there's other game systems out there. It's not going to cost you anything to try it. You've already got your minis. Come and try it, kind of thing. But I think there are better games out there to be recommended to new players. Griffin says Osprey rules are becoming popular as well. Yeah, I think that as there's more and more of them all the time as well, which I think certainly helps. Bad Squiddo says open combat is great for using random minis and building up to army level. I'm always a bit kind of like anything that is kind of model agnostic, if you like, or miniature agnostic. I know people always suggest that they're a great way to get in because you can buy what you want. But my experience and the experience of people I've spoken to, thank you very much, Clyde, as well for that. I'll get back to that comment in a second. The people that I've spoken to who've been new to tabletop gaming, they want a package. They want the easy route in. They want a starter box. They want a 2-player starter box with all the minis they need, all the tokens, the dice, the rule book, like a measuring ruler or whatever it is. They want the board game experience, and I think that's where things in the past, like the starter box for Guild Ball, I thought was a fantastic route in. Single piece plastic miniatures. Everything you needed in the box, even had the mat to play on as well. Things like Warcry, I think are a good route in for all its Games Workshop stuff. I think the stuff they put in the box is fantastic. I think Dead Zone from Mantic is a good route in to tabletop gaming. I just think when it comes to your first game, if you've never played before, you don't own any miniatures, you've never painted a model, like I don't necessarily think that miniature agnostic games are the easy route in, because like there's no kind of path. You almost want people to get started with something find that they enjoy playing kind of miniatures games, and then expand their horizons into, well, oh, now you've got a bunch of minis. Have you seen all of these other stuff that's out? Yeah, you can pick and choose, or these rules are free for this game. You can try this out without doing something else. So I think there's root into it. Clyde Dashing, thank you very much for the super chat there, mate. He says, highly recommend checking out Pulp Alley. Very easy to pick up. Now let's hear you chat about Malifaux. It's interesting, me. I think I feel like, is there a game called Pulp City as well that I'm getting it mixed up with? It's like a superhero game. I'll need to check out Pulp Alley because it's not something that kind of like resonates with me. I don't think I've heard of it before, mate. But yeah, Malifaux was the first game I ever played, really. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Malifaux. That. Adam Dodge there saying Mordheim was always his favourite skirmish game, and Sarah and I also played D&D with the kids. So our upcoming fantasy Norse game, Warriors of the Gods, is heavily influenced by both. I've played the odd kind of like made-up game of D&D with my son. Like, he's only 5, but we'll be doing it again during the summer holidays. Like, he's off. I need stuff to entertain him and things. And he'll quite happily, we'll sit and we'll just like draw on a bit of paper. We'll make a story up, and I'll get him to roll a dice to see whether something happens. Like, we're not playing with rules as such. It's more about just kind of exercising his imagination and storytelling, really. But you can do all that like for free. Like you know, it's free to make up stories if you like. Robert Bowman, thank you very much for the super chat as well. Much appreciated, buddy. Discourse is saying Star Wars Legion's a good first mini war game, although it suffers a bit of FFG game design. Yeah, I think also some of the minis, especially in the original starter set and in the newer starter set, aren't the easiest to put together as well. But yeah, there's a real kind of there's a real mix of those kind of stuff. Right, I tell you what we're going to do. We are going to flick across, and I'm going to take you through some of the. I don't know how much time we're going to have now. We've had a good old natter, but I'm going to start with Malifaux, as we've just been talking about it there as well. So for those that don't know, Malifaux is a game by Weird Games. And originally the guys at Weird Games who kind of created Malifaux, created Weird Games, basically just started off as sculptors. They were just sculpting cool models that they liked the look of. They were designed for painters, and then they ended up with a big range of miniatures, and they thought, well, we should try and kind of write a game for this. How the hell do we get all of these weird different sculpts to hang? Weird technically as in weird the name and weird they were a bit strange. How do we get them to hang together? And Malifaux is the world that they created. Now their store was never the best for being able to see the kind of stuff that they sell, but actually it has improved over time. They do a number of different bits and pieces, but Malifaux 3rd edition is where they're up to at the moment. And then they have their different factions. So we'll just pick a couple of factions here, and we'll just have a look at some of the models. But if you're looking for something that is neither fantasy nor sci-fi, it's something quite unusual. It has a bit of a fantasy element to it, but it's kind of gothic, steampunk, Victorian, a little bit of horror in there. Like that, it's a real mixture of bits and pieces. So I'm trying to think if we pick something that might kind of sort of show it off a little bit. Let's have a little look at what have we got in here that kind of the show. I mean, here's Killjoy, for example, is a bit of an unusual model. As you can kind of see, there's definitely kind of the horror aspects there. There's a little bit of kind of Cenobites from Hellraiser a little bit there. But so you can kind of see the style of some of the weird things that's in there, and the models are all plastic as well. They're all multi-part plastic kits. So if you do like your plastics, this is a one for you as well. But the quality of the sculpts is fantastic. They're all some small pieces. People will complain about building them. I never find it a problem, but I know others do. Others aren't as keen as I am sometimes. But there's a real mix of stuff. There's things like this. So here we have the Dreamer core box. And basically inside this box we have the Dreamer, who's a young boy who's basically his nightmares come to life, and here he has with kind of like some kind of weird beasts around him. There's some Alps which are characters that are in the game as well, and then there is Lord Chompy Bits here, which is a larger model. But these models, for all their gaming pieces, quality wise, really, really sharp plastic. Definitely as good a quality plastic as GW stuff, I would suggest. They're just really unusual stuff to sculpt, to paint rather. They're very, very different from what you would see in other games. If I pick a different faction here, just purely out of to show you something different, like there's factions that have something a little bit more human. More human looking. So the guild, for example, is almost like the kind of like the sort of like the military police type thing who kind of like look sort of try to be the kind of the police of Malifaux, if you like. So you get things like these kind of models as well. So here's the run them down box, which is the guard, and you can see inside there's mounted guards in there, the horse models with the guards on, and then there's some nice little guild hounds as well with some dogs in there as well. So there's a real mix of different stuff. If you're looking for something that is, if you like plastics, if you're looking for something a bit more unusual to paint, if you just want some really cool models, I can highly suggest checking out Weird Games website and checking out the Malifaux miniatures. Again, if you're looking for something a little bit strange, a little bit unusual, we've also got Wild West Exodus by Warcradle Studios. This is a kind of sort of alternate history Wild West. I would say steampunk, but it's not steam. It's kind of like there's an alien energy basically that they've found, which is what changes the kind of the path of history and how they end up being able to have like all sorts of weird constructs and kind of energy weapons. There's a fantastic 2-player starter set. You can see the contents of it there on screen. But yeah, let's have a look at some of the different types of models that in there here as well. So we have 8 different factions. So there is everything in here from kind of like sort of enhanced cowboys with mechanical arms, and you can think a little bit like Wild Wild West, the Will Smith movie. There's an element of that into it, but even then there is also, let's say, the Hex. There's also some stuff in there that's a little bit kind of a bit horror inspired as well. Let's go to the Buy Now tab, and we'll be able to see some of the actual models themselves. So there's things like this Lucretia here, so you can see this kind of thing. So there's all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff that's in this game. If I go back to another one as well, I'll pick some there's some Hex Beasts. I think these ones are relatively new as well. Gives you an idea of the kind of stuff. Now the vast majority of models in this game are resin. The resins from Warcradle are really, really good quality, but the starter boxes tend to be in full plastic as well. So there's a real mix of stuff. So there's all kind of weird beasts and stuff like that. If we go to Warrior Nation, there's some kind of American Indian type stuff as well. Things like Raging Bear, for example. You obviously got the bear model, but this is where kind of like one of the American Indians or the Native American Indians have basically got their kind of spirit animals and stuff like that. So there's some strange models like that. And then if we go to, like, let's take the Lawman, for example, is much more what you would suggest would be classical cowboy type stuff. But then they have things like sort of big sort of Gatling guns and mechanical upgrades and things like that as well. So yeah, really super crisp models, really nice resin to work with. Very little in the way of mold lines from my experience. And I've done quite a bit of painting this stuff over time. When I used to do my painting streams, I've painted quite a bit of Wild West Exodus. I'm a big fan of the kind of the lore and the background of this game as well. So right, let's do one more before we go back to the chat. Mythos is another game by Warcradle as well. So again, it's the resin miniatures, but the quality is fantastic, really, really good. And as you can see, this is very much kind of Lovecraftian inspired as well. 35mm miniatures, so they're a bit bigger than kind of Warhammer stuff. They've got a little bit more size to them, which makes them beautiful to paint and really nice to work with as well. But if we go to shop now as well and have a look at those. If you notice, the thumbnail for tonight had 2 characters in it from this game as well. Let's have a look at the Wildborn faction, because I've got this one, and you can kind of see here. You can see here some of the characters. So there's things in there like sort of snakes and centaurs and kind of, I forget what they're called now, but the big guy, he's got some kind of fancy name. But yeah, again, really nice quality these. If we look at there's obviously the more kind of Lovecraftian kind of sort of townspeople type things as well. So if we have a look at these, you can see there's obviously like sort of like the policemen with the dogs, the kind of like the local sort of police force, if you like. And then obviously you've got characters that are a little bit more sort of chaos. Or kind of Lovecraftian sort of animal or monster inspired as well. So yeah, again, there's a whole mix of stuff for this game. There is a game around this as well. A number of different starter boxes. It's a game that's I would say it's like a simplified kind of Malifaux almost, but there's some really cool stuff in here. I've got this set as well, and I've painted this one up, this Path of Chronozon, and again, this character here was on the cover of the live stream tonight as well. So there's a real mix of stuff there. So yeah, those are a few to check out. I'll go back after the stream tonight and put all the links to these in as well, so you can read them. But I'll nip back into the chat now and just see a few more little bits and pieces. Let's have a look here. Adam's saying Malifaux is good as it has both the Victorian style steampunk and the Wild West style steampunk, depending on the faction. There's such a nice mixture of stuff. You've got a thing like the Ten Thunders faction, which is very much Oriental inspired, kind of sort of very sort of Japanese kind of samurai-esque. You've obviously got like the kind of like the Western factions, like the lawman type things. You've got like the steam fitters, like the outcasts, who are almost kind of mercenary type things. There's just such a mix of different things, and then you've obviously got like the kind of the inhabitants of Malifaux, who are like the monsters and the spirits and the beasts and stuff. So there's such a mix of different stuff in there as well. VG says Weird really need bigger pics of the minis on their website. I'd agree. They need more pictures of the painted stuff as well, to be fair, mate. A lot of their stuff is absolutely amazingly painted as well when you see their kind of studio models. And I would agree, their website needs a little bit more detail on it as well. Discourse says, I feel like I've been a broken record recently, but Carnival has been the easiest buy into a game I've ever seen. You get 2 full gangs, rules, dice, complete terrain for £75. To be honest, even their cheaper starter box, which is about £35, I would suggest is one of the kind of like the easiest entry points to any game as well. Especially if you're coming over from like an RPG side of things. The game's a bit more crunchy. It's not the most simple of games, shall we say. There is definitely an element of like kind of sort of, shall we say, a gentleman's agreement of like, yeah, you can do that, that's fine kind of thing. It's much more RPG storytelling, but from a self-contained starter box, yeah, absolutely fantastic value. Johnson, I want to get a couple of boxes of Malifaux minis just because I hear great things about them. Honestly, I have boxes of the stuff over here. Some of it built, some of it non-built. I just love their stuff. It's the first game I ever got into. I got in right in with first edition when first edition just launched, and I was buying them when they were all metal minis back then as well, and they were beautiful sculpts. Since they went to plastic at about second edition, I think it was, the quality has just kind of gone on another notch as well. The stuff from War Cradle is predominantly resin. But don't let that put you off the quality of it, the sharpness of it. I think I will go back to my Instagram page later on, and there should be some pictures in there of stuff I've been painting over time, and there'll be a mixture of Malifaux and kind of War Cradle stuff in there as well. Yeah, Neil's saying Weird minis have always been amazing. Yeah, I think so, mate, as well. Tom says, whilst I use some GW minis, the vast majority are from War Games Atlantic, North Star, and Alternative Armies old school metal. He's kit bashing the fantasy, Frostgrave and sci-fi ranges together. Are you doing them for any particular games, mate, or do you just like sort of doing them? Discourse says Malifaux is a big blind spot in my gaming library. Malifaux it's not the easiest of games. It's a little bit unusual. The fact that you don't use dice, you use a deck of cards to play with, is kind of takes some people getting their head rounded because they're so used to rolling dice. But the way that the game is all based upon scenario driven, and there's hidden scenarios and secret objectives. It's played on a small playing surface as well, so it's not like, I think it's 3x3. It could be 4x4, but I think it's 3x3. It's played on a small surface, low number count of models. You obviously have cards as well with all of the information on in front of you, so you're not flicking through rule books all of the time. The fact that it's not a game where you just have to go out and kill each other, you have to achieve like sort of scenarios and things. It's just a really, really cool game, and the background to it is just, it's one of the richest kind of backgrounds to any game I've ever played, and it's still like one of my favorites. If like if I could only choose a game by the background lore, Malifaux would be the game that I played. Basically, I wouldn't, if I could only pick one game and I had to listen to the background lore and read all of the books and everything else, Malifaux would be that game for me. Johnny saying GCT Studios has good miniatures for Bushido. We'll get to Bushido later on, mate. Tony says, you know my backstory with Wade from that little quirky Aussie painting forum. Yeah, ended up making friends with Eric and the guy who modelled the BlackJack mini from Weta. Yeah. Super Pumpkin Man says he's been trying for years to make a fantasy RPG system for kids under 10, including its own unique lore, characters and monsters. What I find, mate, that is with my little one, anything too complicated like just kind of loses its, like he loses interest in it. So it's almost like I find for younger kids almost just making stuff up as you go along, and like literally we sat with a big sheet of A3 paper and some pens, and I drew like some trees in the middle of the paper, and I said, right, that's where we are, kind of thing. I gave him a little bit of a background story, and I said, like, which way do you want to go? Like, show me on the empty map, show me which direction you want to go. So you go, I want to go that way, Dad. So I'd read a bit more story, kind of thing, like just make up like, I don't know, like we're walking along the path kind of thing, and we come along here and we find like a little hut in the woods. So I draw like a little hut on the paper, and I was kind of just drawing like a map on the page as we were sitting playing, and he was saying things like, oh, can we go back to the shop? I want to buy some more things to go and like kind of before we go looking for the dragon, kind of thing. So it ended up just being like we were just making up stories, and I was making up dice rolls basically just to make him feel like he was playing a game, really. But he just loved telling a story, and I think with younger kids especially, almost too much prep is probably a negative. It ends up becoming like something you have to try and kind of confine yourself with, as opposed to just keeping it really open-ended and loose. VG saying, yeah, Carney Valley unfortunately suffers from Aussie tax. Yeah, I can imagine that, mate. I mean, we're quite blessed in the UK, especially from the vast majority of stuff is UK based, or isn't that expensive to bring into the UK. Kenneth's own Lawson, Infinity's another good one. It hasn't been brought up yet, but we will get to that one as well. Jabberwocky saying, if someone wanted to start in sci-fi, I'm tied between Infinity and Dead Zone. Infinity gives cardstock terrain in their starter boxes. The hard plastic stuff in Dead Zone's easy to work with. I'd probably suggest Dead Zone is the easier game to play. So if somebody is getting into gaming purely to kind of play the game, if you like, if they're getting into wargaming to play the game, I would suggest the fact that plastic minis are easier to work with for beginners because you use plastic glue. You don't need to use super glue. And the rules for Dead Zone are a lot easier than the rules for Infinity. And I would suggest Infinity's metal minis are a bit more of a fanny on to work with if you're brand new to the game, kind of thing. But then again, I would even suggest that games where you have single piece minis might even be a better route. Yeah, John Ashley's there saying Weird West, like Jonah Hex and Weirder. Yeah, a bit like that, mate. Yeah. Jim saying Wild West Exodus would fit right into a Deadlands RPG. Yeah, exactly, mate. Paul saying Wild West Exodus is something that piqued my interest but never picked anything up. They're absolutely sort of beautiful minis, mate. Beautiful minis. Ed says, is Wild West Exodus related to Deadlands? That's practically the same background story. No, I don't think it is, mate, to be fair. I think it's I think it's a game that was designed by a company called Outlaw Miniatures, going way back over a number of years. I don't know how long kind of sort of Deadlands stuff's been around. I'm not familiar with it, but it's kind of changed over time. And if you're familiar with War Cradle's other games like Dystopian Wars, they're all kind of fit in the same universe now as well. So the background's been expanded out to encompass the fact that Dystopian Wars is part of that, what they call their I think it's called like the dystopian universe, I think. Discourse says, honestly, Wild West Exodus was too much for me in terms of how wild it is. I would have preferred something a little closer to reality. I guess it's one of those things. It's sort of different for each person. I quite like some of the weirdness of it. I like some of the background. There's some really cool novels that were written a long time ago. If you read the background to Wild West Exodus, it's kind of cool in that it is almost like alternative history. So you have characters like Wyatt Earp, you have like Billy the Kid, you have General Custer and all this kind of stuff. But what's happened is because essentially what they've done is they've discovered kind of like alien energy on Earth, and the scientists, people like Thomas Edison and things like that, are starting to work with this energy and are starting to kind of sort of branch the timeline off in a different direction. So things that they shouldn't really have control of, they suddenly do because of the fact that they've got this kind of unknown energy which allows things to work. So yeah, it's really interesting. George is saying, talking alternate Wild West, anyone played Dracula's America? I've not played it, but I have read through the rules, and I'm a big fan of the setting. I like the idea of Dracula's America. And it's not connected to Dracula's America either. Different games, different companies. Clyde saying, what scale is Carnival? It's kind of 28mm, 30mm, kind of average, normal looking. VG saying, I need to look more at Mythos. Love Lovecraftian stuff, but aren't the Lovecraft monsters only one faction? There's a mix of stuff, mate, that they're spread out across different. I mean, the kind of like the fish people, if you like, the kind of the typical fish people are very much one of the factions, but then the other factions have kind of got some really cool backstories and stuff as well. If you one thing I should say for Malifaux, for Wild West Exodus, and for Mythos we've just been talking about, if you go to their website, all of their rules are free online, all of their stats are free online as well. So technically you can download all of that stuff and try the game out for free if you want to play the game, but there's also a good amount of kind of backstory and stuff online as well. Malifaux especially, try out the if you look in your normal podcast place and get the Breach Side broadcast. It's basically like a weekly audio drama, all set in the kind of in the Malifaux universe, and it's absolutely fantastic. But yeah, all of the rules and all of the stats are all free. You can buy the rule books. I've got all the rule books and stuff over here because I love the games. But and there's loads of background story in them as well. If you're really into Malifaux and really into Malifaux background as well, there's another game called The Other Side, which is a different type of miniatures game, but is linked to the same universe. And they have an RPG as well called Through the Breach. And the source books and stuff like that, it's just like reading like the most amazing novels for it as well. Which is why I was saying, like, if I could only have one background for a game ever, it would be Malifaux. Like, I don't think people realise, people who maybe haven't sort of delved into it so much, realise how widespread and how deep the background to Malifaux just is. Let's have a little look. Big Dave said, just going from work, what I miss? We're just chatting about some different kind of miniatures, mate. Neil says, whatever happened to War Machine and Hordes? They pretty much killed the game, mate, trying to sell more miniatures. That's what they did. Jason, Asgard and games in Walsall are having to learn to play Malifaux Day on Saturday, so I expect I'll have a double after playing Saga. Malifaux is not difficult to play. It becomes difficult to master in the fact that there are a lot of synergies between different models and stuff. But I get that's kind of the thing for a lot of games. It's the fact that it works off a deck of cards, which is quite interesting because the whole point is like, you know, if you roll a dice, there's no memory to a dice. You can roll a 6, you can roll a 6, you can roll a 6 kind of thing. But if you're playing with a deck of cards, whatever you've played has gone from your hand, it's gone from the deck, and it's not going to come back around again until you shuffle it. So like there's a predictability and there's a kind of like a hand management of, I've got this 13, do I hang on to it until I need it later on, or I really want this to happen now, I'm going to play that high card now to make sure it happens. And then you can also do what's called cheat and fate as well. So you can play a card, your opponent plays their card, and they basically beat you. You get an opportunity to kind of cheat fate and play another card from your hand to improve your position, if you like. So that it starts to feel like almost like a game of poker at times, because there's that little bit of kind of kidology and kind of like, has he got that card, has she got that card kind of thing. It's really cool. Let's have a little look here. Leap Hard saying Core Space is pretty cool. Core Space is pretty cool. I would suggest the miniatures are board game quality. If you're somebody that's just a painter, for example, I wouldn't suggest that the miniatures are kind of the same level of the stuff we're talking about tonight, but it's definitely a cool game, that's for sure. ER910 says no game is dead as long as you can buy the rules and game pieces. Even if you can't buy the rules or the game pieces, it doesn't mean the rule's dead. If you've got somebody to play with, the game is very much alive, mate. Prawn Touch is saying, couldn't get my head around the synergies in Malifaux, just didn't work for me, but it's a very clever system and the minis are lovely. Some of the plastic sets are fiddly though. There's a few people said that, mate, but I've built models from Games Workshop for things like Necromunda, and they've been just as fiddly. I remember the Goliaths from the Necromunda starter box. One of them had a tiny little cigar that was separate to kind of glue into his mouth. I've built Ossiarch Bone Reapers where their heads are in 3 separate parts and stuff like that. So yeah, the Malifaux stuff to me is just cool plastics basically. Big Dave says, I've never met anyone who's played Dead Zone and didn't love it. I urge everyone just to give it a try. I would agree. Yeah, and Discourse is saying GW have super fiddly minis. Yeah, I mean, GW minis are good quality in terms of, like, you know, the molds. They always come out well in the molds. They always fit together, kind of like very, very good joins. These days, especially with the single pose stuff, they hide a lot of the mold lines and stuff. But I wouldn't suggest they're easy to build a lot of the time. Anyway, let's go back to the next ones and let's have a look on this one. So we've got Marvel Crisis Protocol from Atomic Mass Games. Now, it might not be something that you're kind of like you're thinking about. You know, you might not be into superhero stuff or whatever. But if you even have a passing interest in superhero stuff, the quality of the miniatures is really, really good. And obviously, if you're just buying them to paint, you just buy the models that you like the look of. The beauty with this game, if you do want to play the actual game, is that there are kind of factions, but you can generally take whatever you want. So you will take basically like a leader model who will be your kind. He will kind of dictate what faction you have, for example. So if you take Captain America, you will kind of take him as your leader. You will have an Avengers faction, but then you can just take sort of pretty much anybody that you want to. And obviously, if you're familiar with Marvel stuff, there's history in there where the kind of the heroes and the villains work together at certain times as well. But the starter box is fantastic value. Comes with terrain, comes with kind of 10 models in there as well, and it also comes with 10 models that most people are familiar with, like Iron Man and Spider-Man, and I'm trying to think now because I can't see them. Iron Man, Spider-Man, Red Skull, Baron Zemo, Crossbones, Captain America, Captain Marvel, Black Widow, I think, is in there as well. So there's a good mix of stuff. If you're just a painter and you just want to like sort of get some of the cool stuff, let's have a little look. Can you go to the shop from here? Is there a specific? There it is. There's some really nice bigger models as well that you can get. Let's have a look here. I don't like the way this is all laid out. There's the core set there as well. Marvel Crisis Protocol. But there's some bigger sets as well. So, for example, this Thanos model is really cool. Is it going to actually show you the model? There it is. So you can kind of see this. This is like a plain piece as well. So this model here on this base, actually this actually comes out, and you can use the throne and stuff as a piece of terrain. So there you can see the model as it comes out. It also comes, you can see how that's got a slightly different head there on there as well. It comes with a couple of different head options, and it comes with a couple of different arm options. And then so you can see there the difference between the two of them. So like if you're just a painter and maybe you're a fan of the movies or something like that, and you just want to paint something, there's some really cool stuff there. I mean, pretty much there's so many models available for it now that it's just there'll be something for everybody if you are into that kind of stuff. You can see here as well, you've obviously got Doctor Strange there and Wong as well. And if I go over to my Instagram there as well, if you want to follow me on Instagram, you can see that I'm BlackJack Legacy. These are some of the Marvel models that I've been painting, so these are my particular ones. You can see Miss Marvel there in the background, the kind of big and small version. You can see MODOK, Hulk. You can see Doctor Strange. There's Ghost Rider here. You've got Blade. You've got Deadpool, Iron Fist. And you've got Venom at the background there as well. So there's a real kind of there's a lot of different stuff. I've got some. You can see some of these ones a little bit better here. So there's the Blade model that I painted. Looks pretty cool. Here's Iron Fist and War Machine. There's my Miss Marvel ones that I've been painting. There's just the scale of them is a little bit bigger than kind of like when Warhammer scale, which just makes them like an absolute joy to paint because they're not like kind of tiny and fiddly. Even the smaller models kind of are quite nice to kind of get in and paint as well. There's my my Deadpool model that I painted, and there it is Ghost Rider as well. So there's a number of different bits and pieces. There's some of the core box as well. Some stuff there as well with Dr. Octopus as well, and Ultron is in this core box, and I think I mentioned all the rest of them. Hulk's not in the core box, but he was just something that I picked up and painted myself as well. So yeah, so there's some cool stuff from there. Next up, we've got Moonstone. So if you're more into your kind of old classic fantasy stuff, or if you're into your fantasy stuff along the lines of movies like maybe like Labyrinth or that kind of thing, Moonstone might be something that's like right up your street. So let's have a little look. Let's have a look at the miniatures. So there's a number of 5 different factions here, I think, and you've got basically some which are kind of sort of human models from the human faction, shall we say. Let's see if there's any more close-ups of them like that. I think a lot of these websites could do with some sort of better close-ups of some of these minis, because I mean these are absolutely beautifully painted, but there's no way to kind of get. I mean we can see the kind of like the sculpt there if you like, but there's no big picture of it painted, even though it's there. But this guys, it gives you an idea, very much kind of old school, kind of almost a little bit Discworld-esque, I would suggest. But you can see the type of stuff. But again, if you're just wanting to paint some cool stuff, something a little bit different, might work really well for D&D campaigns. Maybe you're doing something a bit unusual. These will definitely fit that bill. Then obviously we've got the bits of goblins and stuff as well. So we've got Doug the Flatulent there riding a little pug. We've got Beaky Bobby, who's a bit of a flasher. We've got the Vicious Midget. We've got Grub there as well. Fire Spitter with his barrel of beer there. This is a beautiful mini. There's a few people that have painted this one as well for some of our monthly challenges, which is the Goblin Airship, and it's a beautiful mini as well. But so if you're into that kind of whimsical sort of fantasy world, then the quality of these miniatures is absolutely fantastic, I'll be honest. These are resin as well, but really sharp sculpts, beautifully made. If you pick any of these up, you will certainly have no issue at all. The game's really fun. The game's actually very simple to play, and again, doesn't work with dice, works with a deck of cards. Really sort of interesting mechanic, and really kind of sort of unique. It does have some dice, but you basically roll those dice on the board, the D4s I think they are, and they basically show you where the moonstones are that you have to then go and dig up. And the number that's on the dice when it lands is how deep it is. So you basically sort of, that's how many times you have to dig it up to take the moonstone out. So yeah, really cool game, beautiful minis. Definitely one to check out. Next up, we have the Batman miniatures game from Night Models. So again, if you're into your superhero stuff, but maybe you're not into the Marvel side, and like me, you're more of a DC fanboy, you'll see Night Models have their Batman miniatures game. Lots and lots of different models in this. There are so many different sort of versions of Batman in this game. As you can see here, there's the old Adam West. There's the Frank Miller Dark Knight versions. There's some from the Dark Knight movies. There's a Batman there from the Batman multiverse. There's a Batman starter set which has got the Batman, which is the new movie, the Robert Pattinson one. There's so many sort of different ones, but the models really are nice, I'll be honest. They're nice sculpts. Certainly the newer ones. I've seen some of the newer ones now as well. Tony was very kind to send me his I wonder if I can see it in here actually. It was the Batman Who Laughs model. Let's see if we can have see if we can find it in here. It was this one here, which is absolutely gorgeous mini, and it's just the quality of it's fantastic. Tony painted it and sent it to me as a gift, which are absolutely blown away by. It's on my shelf over there, pride of place, and yeah, the quality of it is fantastic. I think some of the new stuff is Cyocast, I believe, and some of the older stuff is resin, but yeah, if you're into, like I say, if you're into your DC stuff rather than your Marvel stuff, some of this stuff might be just what you're looking for. And again, there is a game in here as well. So if you want to play in that universe, you certainly can. Let's have a look at some of the other stuff as well. We've got like the Riddler stuff here. They do some of these. I mean, they've obviously got like the kind of like their plain pieces, but then they also do these kind of larger, almost. They're still plain pieces, but they're kind of like almost like a display, like a mini diorama type thing as well, which are really, really cool. So yeah, watch out for those ones. And next up, we've got Carnivalia as well from TT Combat. So we've just been talking about this earlier. This is a game that is set in Venice. Again, in a bit of an alternate history. You've got the we have some aliens which have appeared, or some sort of I think they're aliens, kind of like monsters have appeared. I mean, obviously we've got the inhabitants of Venice as well. So there's a real mixture of different stuff. We've got things here. I mean, this model is just like, there's not many games that you get models that look like this. This is just something a little bit different and a little bit special. Very much looks like inspired by the Little Mermaid a bit, but you can see as well some of the stuff. One of the reasons alone to play this game and to paint the minis is the fact that you do some amazing MDF scenery, so you can have a beautiful like kind of sort of Venice board. I was talking before about starter sets and great ways to get into games. This starter set is £35 RRP. You can pick this up with discount from someone like Goblin Gaming using my affiliate link, and you will pick it up for about £28. And there are 4 models for one faction in there as well, 4 models for the other faction. I think it's the Richard and is it the Guild? I think are the 2 factions that you get inside. You also get some nice little kind of paper mat there as well. You get dice and tokens inside. You get some cardboard kind of pop-up buildings that you can use, and you also get a rule book as well. So there's a whole host of stuff in there. So as a little starting point, if you just want to kind of sort of try some of these models out, like 28 quid or something for this starter set, 8 models inside, is an absolute bargain, and definitely one of the best kind of and cheapest ways to get into the game. If you really enjoy it and you want to kind of scale up, there is a bigger 2-player starter set that is £65, and it comes with more models for the same faction but doesn't give you the same models. So if you wanted to spend a little bit more money, this one is fantastic value as well. So 8 models for the Guild, and then there's another 7 models there as well for the Richard. So yeah, some beautiful stuff in there. We'll have a quick look at some of the different bits and pieces. I mean, there's some of these things in there as well. Really, really crisp detail. Really nice models. Yeah, no complaints. And again, if you're looking for something a little bit different, just something that's a bit more unusual, not your usual sci-fi, not your usual fantasy stuff. Got a crocodile with a bomb on his back here. There's all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff. There's some really, really cool bits and pieces in here. So yeah, check out that as well. Right, let's have a look at the chat. We'll go back and see what folks are up to here. I'll just dive in anyway here. Prawn Touch is saying Crisis Protocol's a ton of fun. It's a great game, actually. I really like it. It's becoming quite competitive, I would suggest, but it is a really cool game. Jabberwocky saying Dead Zone army lists are part of the core rules and no codices. Absolutely, mate. Yeah, that's another good selling point for them. David Warren says, I'm hoping AMG will take Crisis Protocol and make a Star Wars version that I can use my Legion minis with. It's funny, mate, because I think that they should as well. A skirmish version of kind of a Star Wars game would work really well, but it does make me wonder if, like, would they scale them up a little bit? Would they be separate miniatures? That would feel like a bit of a cash grab, but I would, personally speaking, I would quite like to see some really cool Star Wars miniatures, like individual kind of characters, if you like. Yeah, David said he got a box of Asterians for Dead Zone on sale at Miniature Market for $23. You can make a complete 150 point list with it. Awesome, mate. Discourse is saying if only the Batman minis game was half as popular. Yeah, we've had this chat before, haven't we? But I'm not that familiar with the newer version of it. Certainly the older one I wasn't a huge fan of, but I think as we've chatted about before, things have changed a little bit since that first version. But yeah, I wouldn't mind giving it a try. It seems like Night Models are giving those 2-player starter sets out for fun at the minute. I think everybody and their dogs had one, except for me, of course. But yeah, I'm not bitter about it. Simon Davis saying the new starter set for Batman minis game is tempting. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, for me personally, I think I like the older kind of comic book style stuff. I think it's one of the things I like about the Marvel stuff is it's based upon the comic books as opposed to the movies. So you get that older kind of comic book style, and I think I like that about the Batman stuff. I think I like the kind of the comic book inspired characters as opposed to the more movie inspired ones. But the beauty is there's enough to go around for everybody. EMC says, how about Conquest, Last Argument of Kings, or The Skirmish, First Blood? Minis are very nice. Yeah, they are, mate, actually. And to be honest, they were going to be in my list, apart from their website is pretty garbage, and it wasn't easy to get the miniatures up, but we might come to it later on. Let's have a little look. Just goes to say Moonstone's a great shout, really fascinating combat system. It's really clever how it works with the kind of like the cut and thrust of a sword fight of like, I play this card and this card's like a counter parry. It's almost like a really fancy version of rock paper scissors a little bit, but it is pretty cool. Dritz78 says, I've bought into far too many systems that are still sealed. I found I'm just not a fast painter. My thing this year is to build and paint 2 Dead Zone Firefight factions and get to a local club. Yeah, I mean, I'm not suggesting anybody goes out and buys anything, mate. I'm just I'm trying to show that there are so many different miniatures out there, so many different systems that, like, even if you never play these games, but you just want something different to paint, not everything has to be from GW. You know, they are not the only flavour of ice cream, as I mentioned before in a video. There's lots of different cool stuff out there. Yeah, Jim's saying, I love those models. The Discworld reference grabbed my attention. Yeah, they've definitely got that kind of a feel to them. And yeah, in Discord saying Moonstone is an incredibly whimsical game. I just love the fact it's definitely not one of those games that you could consider to be competitive. It's one of those games that you really are just playing for a bit of fun. Like, you can't help but kind of have a bit of a laugh playing it. I like to play it while spinning glass balls in my hand and singing. What's that one about the I can't even remember. I was even going to try and sing the Goblin King song there, but I can't remember the words. Monstercraft says, no, not a big fan of cards in my war games. Minis are great though. I like cards in war games, mate. I think it's just it's a nice change of pace. It makes games feel different instead of like, not everything has to have dice. I like the fact that there's a memory to the game. I like the fact that it can become a bit more predictable. Like, you know what's left in your deck because you know what you've played. And it uses a card system, but it's very, very different to the way Malifaux uses a card system. Malifaux uses like a 52 card deck, like a standard deck really, although it's altered for Malifaux. Moonstone uses like a almost like coloured decks, and it's almost a bit of a bluffing game. It's really, really clever. Yeah. Invisible says, evening all, hope everyone's doing well. Nice to see you. Simon Dave saying night models have really amazing sculpts. VG says, did I just see a person with a camera for a head? I think they actually had a bomb on their head, mate, if I remember right. Neil Barton says, I thought my gaming was eclectic, learning so much from tonight's stream, love it. That's the plan, mate. Like, there are so many games out there that people, unless somebody introduces you to them or you see them somewhere, you don't even know they exist. And this is always my point. This is the whole point of what this channel's about, and has always been about. And yes, I might have got there have been Games Workshop games that I've enjoyed, things like Kill Team in the past and things like Warcry. There have been games that I've enjoyed, but they've been games that I've enjoyed alongside all of these other things. Like, I have Moonstone minis, I have the Carnivale starter sets, I played Malifaux inside out, like especially in first edition, and I have so many models for it. I've played and I painted Wild West Exodus stuff. I've got the Mythos stuff which I've been painting. I've played and I paint and play Marvel Crisis Protocol stuff. Like, these are not just games that kind of, the stuff I'm recommending are stuff I've physically had my hands on this stuff and can say, these are really cool minis. These are fantastic quality. There will be some stuff later on that I've not physically seen with my own eyes, and that's why I'm going through the stuff that I'm more familiar with first. But there's so many different cool things out there. Absolutely. Let's have a little look. Jonathan Hart says, just jumped on, so might have missed a few things. What's your thoughts on Battletech? I'm picking up the game or Armoured Combat tomorrow. First of all, mate, thank you very much for joining the chat and for your comment. Second of all, I've never played Battletech because, I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not really into that kind of mech type game. I keep hearing about how it's like it's like gaming with an Excel spreadsheet, and that there's an easier version that you can play. But I'll be honest, the Battletech sort of mechs, if you like, is not really the kind of thing that I particularly like myself. So I've never kind of looked into it any deeper. But plenty of people seem to like it, mate. But it's not my kind of thing. Let's have a little look as well. Bit more chats. Dritz is saying, I wish GW would bring back Warhammer Fantasy. I think they're pretty much going to, mate, aren't they? But we don't need Warhammer Fantasy. There's too many other cool stuff out there to go back to old stuff. Big Day says, I'm selling a lot of my 40k stuff. Surprising how much you can get from other game systems in exchange for stuff I don't want to play anymore. I can absolutely sort of recommend it, like, don't hang on to stuff if you're not going to use it. Sell it on, replace it with something that you are going to use. Like, having stuff just sitting on your shelf, it's not doing anybody any favors, really, is it? Yes. So let's go back over. We might as well have a look at some more cool stuff. And we are looking, even though we've mentioned it before, we are looking at one-page rules. And the reason we're looking at one-page rules is because if you do have a 3D printer, it opens up a whole different world of miniatures when it comes to kind of just like, but it was just getting miniatures for the love of getting miniatures and painting stuff and getting something a little bit different. If you're a player of 40k but you want some alternative miniatures, maybe you don't play in GW tournaments and you just play with a few mates in the garage kind of thing. There's some good GW alternatives in here as well. But to be absolutely fair to them, they stand on their own as some beautiful minis as well. So what I'll do is I'll click on the My Mini Factory system here, and if you go to My Mini Factory, you can kind of see all the different stuff they do. There are some beautiful, beautiful stuff they do. I've actually seen this model printed out. This let me get rid of the advert here. This Saurian Gecko Starseer. So as you can see, Ian, thank you very much, mate, for opening your pledge there. Really appreciate that, buddy. Thank you very much. So yeah, we've got this Saurian one, which is obviously for, what the hell are they called now? I'm not, as you can tell, I'm not that much into 40k. The dinosaur guys, skinks and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure they've got a cool name now, but yeah. But I've seen this model printed out, and it looks absolutely beautiful. Let me just get rid of these adverts here as well. Everybody trying to make their money. How dare they advertise on my channel? It is a beautiful mini, and this is a 3D file. As you can see there, it comes with engineered supports, so you don't have to worry about any of the support stuff yourself if you've got a 3D printer. My 3D printer is, I've got a Mars 2 Pro. It's a 4K screen. It's not the biggest of print beds, but it's big enough for printing minis on, and they're about 200 quid these days kind of thing. You don't need an all singing, all dancing printer to be printing this kind of stuff to any good level of stuff. I'll show you some stuff I've got on my desk here, things I've been printing off myself that I've been busy painting and stuff, and the quality is more than good enough. But yeah, this gives you an idea of some of the stuff that they do. They also obviously do things like the actual kind of like the armies as well, so you can buy, for example, let's have a look here. I think they do, like, for example, you can buy that file for $74, and it has all of those different files in there. So that, by the looks of this, they look very, very much kind of like sort of Tau inspired type thing, I believe. But some of these, I mean, these are cool minis in their own right. You know, these would kind of double up for a lot of different things. Some beautiful sculpts in there. You can see the amount of stuff. So you get the files for all these different types of things. There's some really, really cool stuff. Let's have a look at something else, because they do the fantasy. They do fantasy ones and they do the sci-fi ones as well. So let's have a little look. So here's a Beastman army bundle, for example. So if you're into your Beastman, You can see a real mix of some really cool stuff. So yeah, for all, so I wasn't kind of sort of kicking on one-page rules before. I just don't see one-page rules as an entry point into the hobby, because you either need to buy GW minis or you need to have a 3D printer, and I'm assuming if you're new, you probably haven't got either of those things. But if you are looking for kind of some alternative minis for playing Warhammer, or you're looking for some alternative rules to play Warhammer, you can do a lot worse than look at this stuff. There is some really, really cool stuff in there. And as far as the actual the minis go, they do print out really nicely. I have printed off some of the one-page rules minis, and they do print off really nice. And again, as I said before, they all come with the support on them as well. So yeah, if you're into 3D printing, that might be something that you want to take a look at. Next up, we're going to have a quick look at Wargames Atlantic. So these are a company who basically just sell miniatures, and you can use these in any of the sort of different types of games that you're playing. So if you're playing sort of historical stuff, if you're playing, maybe you're playing a little bit of kind of 40k, or you're playing sort of some of the sci-fi alternative rules, these do some really cool stuff as well. So these are a new pre-order that's coming out at the moment called Space Nam. And as you can see, they're very much Katachana inspired. These are the models here. You can kind of see them there. Again, if you're just looking for something like alternative Warhammer minis, or you're looking for stuff for Stargrave games, or you're looking for stuff for what, even for one-page rules, and you don't have a 3D printer, these are the kind of cool stuff that you can get from them. So there's some very much kind of Commando-esque inspired stuff, Predator inspired, I think, as well. There's some cool stuff in here. You can see again that they're plastic on the plastic sprues. Really nice crisp quality by the looks of it as well. So yeah, and these are £30 for 20. Yeah, I think it's 20. Yeah, 20 figures you get inside this, which is really cool. You can see both the sprues with the different weapon options and things as well. So those are just some of the things they do there. Let's have a little look at, let's see, a classic fantasy. You can see they've got halflings, they've got skeletons, spiders, lizard men. Let's have a look at the lizard men. I've not seen all of these before, so let's have a little look and see the kind of things. Like there's nothing wrong with this kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like everybody feels like you have to buy GW stuff all of the time. Like when it comes to these kind of races and stuff, but like these are cool minis, man. These are cool. Let's have a look at the goblins. Like these are much more kind of like less comical, if you like. Like they seem more, almost more menacing, rather than very kind of threatening, rather than very kind of comedy-esque, I suppose. And then you've got some halfling militia as well. So if you're building a halfling warband for Kings of War, and you want some extra bits and pieces just to mix it up a bit, these again £25 here as well for 40. £25 for 40 halflings is fantastic value. So you don't always have to be kind of spending a fortune on stuff as well. So these are great to get into. And if we have a look at, say, we've got like the Legion stuff there as well. Oh, that's the forum. Sorry, I thought that was Legion stuff. So we'll look at Deathfields. What's this? Oh, different stuff. It's a bit more sci-fi stuff in here as well. So again, if you're playing Stargrave, if you're playing any of those kind of games, these are worth checking out to have a look at some different bits and pieces as well. Next up, we've got Mantic. And I'm just obviously they've got a whole host of different stuff on here, but I thought I'd show off the Empire of Dust stuff, which is their newest models. It's not a new faction. They had old models in the past, but these ones have replaced those ones because these ones are plastic now. But again, for £75, you can get that sort of small army there. Again, I think, does it tell you how many models is in this? There is 51 models inside this for £75. Again, you can get discount online as well. And then they also do some really, really cool kind of like of the bigger models as well. So here's Shobik, the Dust Idol. This one's a particularly nice model as well. You can kind of see this here. Yeah, obviously, does that come with a different head, or is that? Yeah, it is a different head option. A couple of different head options. If I'm being perfectly honest, I don't think the paint job is fantastic on this. It doesn't really show off the model to its best, I don't think, but it's good enough. It's good. It's good enough, but I think like when you see it there on the white background, I think some of that paint job gets lost a little bit. But yeah, there's some cool models in here as well. That's on a 50mm square base. You can see these are the new enslaved. We can have a look at those as well. Again, there's some different weapon options and things as well. So yeah, I mean, for those that don't know, Mantic they have their sci-fi games and they also have their fantasy games. As you can see, there's orcs, halflings, there's Basileans, there's dwarves, there's elves, Night Stalkers, Northern Alliance, like some of the Northern Alliance stuff. Let's have a little look at that. Very much kind of, if you're into your sort of what's it called, Game of Thrones type thing. These are very much the kind of sort of wildling kind of aesthetic. The Frost Giant is a beautiful model, really, really cool. Like that one is 60 quid, but it's a really, really cool model. You can kind of see some of the detail on it. I think this one was painted by Angel Heraldez as well, so that one really does show it off to its best. So yeah, I'm sure most of you will be familiar with the Mantic stuff, but again, if you're looking for something a bit different to paint, there are some of these kind of big centerpiece models as well. Next up is Infinity by Corvus Belli. So this has been around for years, and they are one of the few companies that are still all kind of pretty much all metal miniatures. Number of different factions for their sci-fi game. We'll just have a little look at some of them here, so you can kind of see these pictures. Actually, we'll just let me go back there. That wasn't what I was going to do, but you can see that they basically got like, the orc troop there as well. We've got a knock-in. They've got a really nice. There's almost an alternative. I would say alternative history, but it's almost like an alternative future where there are kind of sort of people like from our timeline who have almost been kind of sort of cloned and brought back in the future. So you do have people like kind of like Joan of Arc is in this game, and I think what's he called, Braveheart as well. I forget what he's called. I think might be Rob Roy as well, might be in it as well. So there are certain characters that kind of are in this as well. But yeah, some cool models. If you're into that kind of anime aesthetic type thing, it very much has that kind of feel to it. You do have some kind of sort of mechs and things in it, what they call tags, which are kind of like piloted robot type things. But there's some cool stuff in here. If we go to one of the other factions, you can see that there's a lot of different. We've got Hack Islam. We've got a bit of a different feel to them, and you can see here almost more like kind of sort of militia type kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like rebel faction type things. But they are beautiful minis. They're always really nicely painted as well in their kind of in their studio shots. But yeah, beautiful minis. Don't be put off by the metal. They are really, really crisp sculpts and glued together beautifully as well, like the joins in the tabs and stuff. So yeah, definitely check out Corvus Belli for some of that stuff. Cool. Let's go back and have a look at some of the chat. Loads of chat tonight. Thank you very much, folks. Seraphon, that's the one I was trying to think of, mate. I couldn't remember the name. Neil saying having a group to play all these games with is important. It depends, mate. If you're not a player, if you just like painting minis, you can have me of whatever you want. There you go. Paul's giving me all the words now to the song. I still ain't singing it. Cobra Commander says, has Song of Ice and Fire been mentioned? It hasn't, mate. I've not mentioned it yet. Song of Ice and Fire's got some interesting minis. Getting them seems to be the problem at the minute, mate. I've heard a few people who've gotten into Song of Ice and Fire and are now struggling to pick up miniatures. Gumero, hello, says hello from Paraguay. Glad to catch the stream. I'm getting into 6mm war gaming. Wow, mate. It must be cheap at that size. I've never played the stuff that small, mate. Yeah. Simon Davis says, Fantasy is cool, but Kings of War lets you run halfling riding dogs as cavalry. Yes. Andy F says, Grimdark Future Firefight is fun. Yeah, I've heard a few people saying that they enjoyed it. VG said he's buying his brother-in-law the Bolt Action Band of Brothers starter for Christmas. He's a military modeler, so even if I can't tempt him to play in the game, he can at least enjoy building the minis. He can paint them for you, mate, then, can't he? That's the way. And Camo says, yeah, the Parabellum site's a bit difficult to use. Yeah, I was obviously going through doing the prep work today, and I brought their site up to show their stuff off. And actually, like, it was really hard to even just like see the miniatures. So yeah, the website wasn't great, mate. So I thought I'd best off. RG says, needs to start off being fun, find out about more stuff I didn't know I needed. Good night, folks. Take care, matey. Yeah, Vijay's saying for copyright reasons. Yeah, I couldn't remember the name, Seraphon. Tony says, if I did play games, I'd have no problem in trolling for unknown or lesser known people looking for stuff that fits my vibe. Yeah, I'm kind of like that. I mean, like, I will happily travel to like if I want to, if there's a game I want to play, I will happily travel to play it. Like, most games have an event or have a tournament somewhere. And that's one way to get like a load of like-minded people together. You don't necessarily need to have somebody on your doorstep. You just need to be willing to put the effort in to meet up with someone, I guess. Disco saying, I'm so tempted to get some of those Space Nam models for Stargrave Crew. Yeah, they are pretty cool, man. I must admit, I'd even looked at them for something like Dead Zone or something. I thought they would fit in well for a GCPS type stuff. Drizz is saying there are Discworld minis I've seen. Is the game around them or just for painting? I think they're just for painting, mate, if I'm honest. I could be wrong though. Yeah, Prawn Touch is saying, looking forward to see what comes out of the War Games Atlantic Reptilian Overlords collab. Yeah, it will be interesting because I think that's am I right in thinking that's the first one that's come out of it? James Bray, good evening, buddy. How you doing? Horns fan says that, yeah, I need Stargrave and Rangers of Shadowdeep STLs. Certainly plenty of them online, mate, that's for sure. Ed saying, yeah, time to call it a night. Thank you, buddy. I really appreciate you coming in. VG saying the Gobbos are a bit generic. I think that's the plan with those kind of models, mate, is that they tend not to be polarizing really when they're from these companies who are trying to appeal to kind of gamers everywhere type thing. But they're certainly, they're a good option if you're not a fan of the kind of the comedy aspect of Goblins, which seems to be what a lot of people go for. James Braces, am I late? A little bit, mate, but that's alright. Holy Inquisition for the Imperium of Mankind says, Temple of the West, Reverend Rackham's confrontation is starting producing old minis that never got sculpts. Interesting. Yeah, James is saying, really like that Showbick model. Yeah, I do too, mate. Like I said before, I'm not sure that the paint job really shows it off to its best ability, but it's a really nice model. Clyde says, has the quality of Mantic improved from their first Kickstarter? I wouldn't mind nabbing that stuff, but when I got the first Kickstarter stuff, it was pretty bad. Yeah, there's a lot of water under the bridge, mate. Mantic's come a long way when it comes to minis. I think the problem is folks who think Mantic basically make rubbish minis or make poor quality minis remember the really old minis from like 10, 11 years ago, where there was the odd one that probably wasn't, even they would admit, isn't up to scratch, really. The stuff they're producing now, the plastic stuff that they're producing for Kings of War and producing for Firefight is absolutely great. The resin stuff that they're making in-house is super sharp, really detailed. If you've not looked at any Mantic stuff for like a long time, I would suggest getting your hands in a store somewhere, seeing if you can crack open a box and have a look at the quality of it, or have a look at any of the channels that kind of show off some of the unboxing stuff. I've done painting videos recently for the Firefight starter set. This stuff has come a long way, mate. It's not what it was, and it's not what people remember and what gives them a bad name these days. Let's have a, William Wallace, I couldn't remember his name. Thank you very much, folks, for that one. Jim's saying he's just finished watching Moon Knight and now he wants to paint Egyptian stuff. I was a bit like that, mate, after watching Moon Knight. Simon Davis says, Infinity have really cool minis, but the depth of rules puts me off. So I've done a video on this in the past, and Infinity's rules are not actually that complicated. The problem you've got is all of their rules are in one place. So if you're used to playing something like 40k, for example, where the core rules are in one book, and then the stats for one faction's in this codex, and the stats for this faction's in this codex, and then there's cards which have like stratagems on or something else like that. They're scattered around all over the place. Imagine if Warhammer took all of that stuff and put it in one book. Imagine how overwhelming that would be. And essentially that's what Infinity is. It's obviously not as complex as 40k in that respect, but they've put everything in one book. So there's a lot of stuff in that book you do not need to know. Like there's rules in there for all sorts of kind of special weapons and special abilities. If the soldiers or the faction you're running doesn't have those abilities, you don't need to know it. It's not really a problem. And this has always been my issue with the Infinity stuff. It could almost do with being edited and broken up a little bit, just so it doesn't feel like it's just piled on you all in one go. Even Code 1, which is their kind of streamlined version or scaled down version to make it more simple, still kind of suffers from a similar issue. The rules are really, really simple. The basic rules of kind of moving and shooting and the face-to-face rules and the solo rules, they're pretty cool. They're pretty cool rules. The problem comes is when you become overwhelmed with a lot of information, and the thing is you don't need most of that. And I think it's a game that really benefits from being demoed, because then I think you go, oh, so it's not that hard then, kind of thing. It has a really good free app where all the stats are on the free app. The rules are free online. You can kind of check them all out, and their starter boxes are really good value as well. But yeah, to kind of new players or people trying to get into it by reading the rule book, it's almost like, oh god, like it's just this kind of brain dump of information. Yeah, Guillermo says Angel Heraldes used to paint most of their stuff Infinity. He did. He started off as their studio painter. Really, that was where he first kind of started. He was their studio painter, and then obviously his style of painting with the Infinity minis became so synonymous that other people wanted to kind of have their minis painted like that as well, and that's where Studio Heraldes sprung up out of that. But yeah, he did start off working for them. Tasty Brain Drain says, what's your thoughts on Warcrow? I'll be honest, mate, I've not stayed that close to it at the minute. There's a lot of information about it that's kind of flying around, but I've intentionally kind of just, I'll wait until I know more. I'll wait until I kind of find out a bit more about it. I think I'm interested to find out more, but at this point in time, I'm waiting until it's a bit more fleshed out, really, rather than just getting snippets here and there. James is saying Entoyment has loads of the Song Ice and Fire stuff on the shelf if anyone's after them. I think they're a bit scattered around, mate. Some people are struggling to get hold of stuff, and I guess other places have still got stock where it's not selling very well. But then I guess it's shops that maybe don't have the same online presence as some of the stuff. Sumberland says I'll definitely order Carnival, mate. Yeah, it's really cool set, mate. Great value as well. Prawn Toucher says Relic Blade is the game that's really excited me in the last few years. Such a shame it's not the easiest to buy outside of the US without a hefty shipping charge. Yeah, that is one of the things that it's kind of like held it back. I think there is a company now has the UK distribution rights for it, but I think because it must be getting shipped in such small numbers, essentially it's still quite expensive. Discourse is saying Code 1 felt relatively accessible to me. Do you know what the problem is? Is when you get the starter boxes, like the Code 1 starter box, it comes with rules to introduce you to playing the game. So it let's play 2 miniatures against 2 miniatures with a little bit of terrain, and I'll teach you how to do the shooting and stuff. And then let's do 3 miniatures versus 3 miniatures, and I'll teach you about certain other aspects. And if you go through the step-by-step guide, you get to the end of it and you think, oh, that's pretty cool. I know how to play this now. This is all right. And then you download the full rule book, because the full rule book doesn't come with Code 1. You download the full Code 1 rule book, and all of a sudden it's like 94 pages, and you go, oh shit, there's all this extra stuff in here that it didn't teach me how to do all that stuff. And it's what I was explaining before about how it's like every weapon in the game is in there and every ability is in there, but the models you get in the box don't have all them abilities. They don't have all of that stuff, so that you can play with what's in the box and never have to worry about sort of 60% of the book, if you like. And that's where it gets confusing. Is you almost need that. You need somebody who knows what they're doing to demo it. It's not an easy game to learn to play from the book because it becomes overwhelming. Jim's saying, do the FDM printers do a decent job of printing miniatures, or a resin required? I would suggest that you need a resin printer for when it comes to miniatures, mate. You can print them off with the FDM one, but the quality's never really great. Neil says, hasn't Infinity gone to a living rule book now? It's got No, it's not really a living rule book, mate. It's got an online rule book which is free, but it's also in print as well. So it's not. They're in the N4 stage now, which is like the 4th edition of the rules. Thanks for the super chat there, James Bray. He says, "Name 3 minis you really fancy painting." Oh, 3 minis I really fancy painting. Do you know what, mate? I'm not really sure. I think I'd quite like the kind of. I do like painting like kind of big, like centerpiece minis. They always kind of like make me like kind of. They always like kind of. I always enjoy that kind of stuff. Something a bit bigger. I really wanted to paint the ship from Mantic. What was it called again? Is it called the Interceptor? And I painted one of those recently, and I really enjoyed painting that. I can kind of see it over there. I've got a few bits on my desk at the minute. Actually, I was going to show off tonight. So I've got this, which is the tunneler from the Veerman, the space rats for Firefight and for Dead Zone. So I'll be painting that up soon. I built that the other day, and these are pretty cool as well. These kind of moving and out and stuff. So that's pretty cool. And I'm busy painting at the minute. I'm busy painting a turtle, he says. So this is 3D printed. This came off my 3D printer. Like I said, they're probably about 200 quid now. I think it was about 260 when I bought it. But this is the kind of quality of stuff that you can get off 3D printers. Oh, you don't want my face, you want the title. So it's kind of in the middle of being painted. The shell there is obviously just pre-shaded and stuff like that. If I can get, there we go. But the quality of them is fantastic. So yeah, so like so what my point from that kind of stuff, like even if you're just a painter, I honestly think if you just enjoy painting miniatures, I think a 3D printer, a resin 3D printer, is almost like a no-brainer because you have access to so much stuff out there. But this kind of stuff as well. So this is a model that I was kind of I've part painted and then I moved on to start something else. If I can just, and this is from Joan of Arc by Mythic Games. Now bearing in mind that game is like a 10mm game, 10mm scale. You can imagine the side of the beasts and the monsters that's in that as well. So that is, if I can just, I'll tell you what, if I close my eyes there so you can see the scale of that, the size of it. So I quite like painting kind of bigger stuff, like kind of real cool centerpiece stuff. But at the minute, mate, I'm not really sure if I had to pick 3. Gimero says Infinity just released a slim rulebook for free. Yeah, all their rulebooks are free online, mate, to be fair. You definitely can. Yeah, Tony's saying Mantic's on top of their game for resin. Their new resin and hard plastics are really nice. And Adam's saying you can't compare OG Mantic stuff to their current stuff. Yeah, definitely miles apart, mate. Driz says, anyone heard of Twisted? I have heard of Twisted, mate. James just a super chat there. Says, name 3 Space Marines you really fancy painting. None, mate. I really fancy painting. What did I say? Actually, I wouldn't mind painting one of the Primarch ones. I think just because I like those bigger models. But I don't think I'd ever spend the money on one. That's for sure. What was I just talking about there? We talked about Warcrow a little bit there. Underdog painting. Hello, mate. How are you doing? Clyde saying more than willing to give Mantic another chance. Love the look. I just don't want to get a bit again. Yeah, certainly the newer stuff, mate. I mean, there was obviously some of their older stuff is still on the website a bit as well, so you kind of have to do a little bit of research to know whether it's new or old. But I would say like 80%, 90% of their stuff is like is newer stuff these days. There's very little of it is like if you get the old elves or the old dwarf stuff, or some of the old undead stuff, if you like, probably you'll get the original stuff. But 90% of it now, 80% of it, I would say, is probably that. Let's have a little look. Adam saying Infinity Law is awesome. It definitely is, mate. It feels like it could be easy to be humanity's future. That's one of the problems, mate. It could be, couldn't it? Yeah, and Driz was just chatting about Twisted. I have seen the Twisted minis, mate. I'm not that familiar with the game itself, though. Yeah, Discourse is saying Exit 23 Games has Relic Blade for the UK. That's right. I still think it's quite expensive, though, I believe. Gimero says TT Combat still has the Relics game and has done nothing with it. Yeah, I remember when they bought it, when was it Tor Wargaming, I think it was, went out of business and TT Combat bought it. I think essentially they're pretty much just swamped under with all of the other stuff they bought around the same time. They bought Carnivale from, I forget what they're called now. I forget what that company was called, but they bought that. They bought Drop Zone Commander and Drop Fleet Commander as well from Hawk War Games and brought them in-house. And I think they basically, and then obviously they've got their own game of TT Combat as well. I think they ended up just probably getting a bit swamped with everything else. So at the minute, it's kind of sitting there doing nothing, you're right. Tony saying there, but Annie the Pack Bearer from Bad Squiddo, the Fisherman from Mythos, and one of the Vampires from the Crimson Court. That's 3 cool minis, mate. VJ says, did you cover Bushido on Monpok yet? Do you know what, mate? Let's. I haven't covered Bushido on Monpok. Monpok's not in my list, but Bushido is. So let's go. We're going to go to Bad Squiddo Games as well. Because we had Annie on last week, I thought I was sure I didn't have my laptop connected because I was doing kind of like a bit of a ghetto setup. I didn't have my laptop and everything connected, and I never got a chance to show our stuff off. So I thought I would show it off this week while we're talking about the minis. So she does a real mix of different stuff. I brought up her female Soviets here as well because somebody was saying last week about how cool they are, and they are very cool actually. So if you're into your World War II stuff, or you're into your kind of maybe even a bit of what's it called? Conflict 47, something like that. Maybe you might want some Russians, but these are really cool minis as well. Really nice. £22 there for 10 minis, which is not bad at all, is it? Not bad at all. But so yeah, some cool Russian stuff in there as well. There's some feudal Japan stuff, so there's a mixture of things if you've got more into your feudal Japan type stuff. There's some things in here as well, some horror. Some very chewed up looking horses and stuff there as well, which I certainly wouldn't want to be meeting on a dark night. Mummies and witches, vampire hunters, all sorts of kind of bits and pieces. Sergio the Sax Man. I can still hear that from Lost Boys there playing away in the background. But yeah, there's a number of different stuff. I was also looking at these busts as well, which I think look really cool. That's 1/10 scale, which I'm not really sure how tall that is 1/10 scale. Does it tell you? No, it doesn't tell you in millimeters type thing. But yeah, it looks cool. There's some of these as well with basically these are kind of women in war. Fulan, Amy, and Alex, which are really cool as well. And then there's all sorts of kind of stuff in there. There's fantasy minis as well, bits and pieces. There's Annie the Pack Handler there, the one that Tony was just talking about. So yeah, there's a real mix of different stuff. If you fancy some some war pigs, there's a bunny in a tank. Interesting stuff. But yeah, there's a real mix of different bits and pieces. And then there's also stuff in there as well for Gaslands and Atlantis Miniatures and Sarisha Precision. So there's all sorts of other stuff. But she does have her own range of things in here as well. So yeah, check them out. The Drowned Earth is another one that I wanted to kind of show tonight as well. Who have some cool minis. So this is very much a game that is kind of set in an alternative future. Let's have a look at some of the minis in here. I think I've painted some of these on live stream and stuff as well. These are the heroes for the Elia Chronicles game, which I think are really cool. You kind of have this female gorilla here with a shield and a knife. Got this kind of crocodile guy. There's a bit of a dwarf warrior there as well, and there's a female kind of hunter. There is also these like starter boxes as well, so you can see there's some real interesting. Let's have a little look here as well. We'll get some of these are really cool minis. Got this guy here as well with his little lizard on his hand. There's a real mix of bits and pieces in here as well. But so there's all sorts of stuff in here. You've basically got sort of like the world basically kind of went underwater, and then basically sort of it was almost like apocalypse basically, and then things started to kind of come back, and sort of the land starts to grow back. So there's people who've managed to survive. There's also like a lab there as well, which has basically been experimenting on animals, and a lot of them have obviously escaped, and then they've obviously kind of getting out into the world as well, which is why you have a mixture of different things. So there are some humans, and then there are some kind of sort of crossed animal things. There's also like dinosaurs as well, so There's all sorts of dinosaurs in this game. So again, there's a real mix of different bits and pieces. If you're looking for something a bit more unusual, there's a great background to this. There's 2 games here. There is the Drowned Earth, which is a bit more kind of like a sort of, I think it's 3x3 or 4x4 skirmish game. And then there's a smaller version, which is called Elia Chronicles, which is coming out soon. It's just shipped its Kickstarter stuff. It's releasing full retail soon, which is kind of a bit more like a narrative. It's like a narrative kind of story adventure type thing that you can play solo or with a co-op against the game, and there's like an AI for the dinosaurs and stuff. But the models can be used in the Drowned Earth 2 as well. Next up, we've got Bushido from GCT Studios. I don't know much about this one. I've not seen these models in the flesh, but everybody keeps telling me about how cool they look. So you can see some of the models here. These are from the new 2-player starter set. And I believe these are resin, although I could be wrong. Let's have a little look at the store and see what kind of things they've got. Because as I said, I'm not familiar. Oh, why is... You can just see it spinning away there. Let's have a little look in here. Slow websites for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know why they've got a particularly slow website. It's thinking about it. There we go. I think this is another one of those things where it's, are they just cards and replacement parts? There's this 2-player starter set. Oh, yeah, these websites are not great, are they? Oh, that's the picture we just had. Anyway, Bushido, nice looking minis. Does it tell you what they're made of? Let's have a little look. 10 miniatures and bases. The product is made of resin, so yes, it is resin. But you can kind of see there as well the artwork for the minis along the top there. And then last of all, I've got in my list here, I've got Warlord games as well. So obviously I've not touched on any sort of historical stuff. I thought it'd be right to cover some historical bits and pieces as well. And Warlord seem to cover kind of most of that as well. So they've got some World War II, some Black Powder stuff. They've got Pike and Shot. They've got Hail Caesar. There's Mythic Americas as well. And then they've also got some 2000 AD type stuff as well. So there's a real mix of bits and pieces here as well. They do some stuff for Frostgrave, for example, where they'll do some kind of Frostgrave soldiers and wizards. Let's have a little look at the wizards box. I've never seen these before, to be fair. So let's have a look and see what's inside them. Well, they don't show you what's inside them. That's how good they are. And then there's a new bolt action starter set, I think, coming as well, isn't there? Called A Gentleman's War, which I think is on pre-order at the moment. And does it say what's in it? Why do these websites? They're not great, are they? 24 Africa Corps, plastic infantry, an armored car, and 24 8th Army Desert Rats, and a plastic Hummer, I should say. So yeah, you can see the kind of stuff that's in there as well. So if you're looking for some World War II stuff, there's a new starter set coming as well. And then you also get the second edition boot there as well, which is the current edition. It's been the second edition for quite some time now, and that's the new box. So we have covered a multitude of gaming systems this evening, folks. Let's have a look at the vote as well. How did the vote come in? So the vote came in. 44% of people are mainly painters, 29% of people are mainly players, and 27% of folks are mainly collectors. And there's been 303 votes in that, actually, which is really cool. So yeah, mainly painters, I would suggest, but a high number of collectors, which I wasn't quite prepared for. So we'll end that poll now. Let's have a little look here. See what we've got. Jez is saying Bad Squirrel Scenics are lovely, gorgeous resin, really recommend them. I've not seen that stuff, mate. Adam's saying I love Drowned Earth, fantastic setting, really beautiful minis. They are really nice minis, mate. VG saying he's played some Drop Zone Commander, good game but a little niche. Yeah, it's kind of niche here, to be fair, mate. I don't think it's not massive. Yellow Belly Tabletop says, geez, you missed the treat at UK Games Expo. The painted Bushido in the cabinet was amazing. I was at UK Games Expo, mate, but I didn't really spend there. I don't even think I saw the Bushido stand, mate, if I'm perfectly honest. Clyde saying the minis are so cool, everyone's trying to look at them at the website, which slows their server. I think it's just not a great website, mate, if I'm honest. Discord says so many mini websites struggle to promote their products well. I could not agree more. Honestly, like, it's like your shop front. It's like some of these people have gone to all this trouble of paying artists and getting things sculpted and getting some beautiful stuff, and then they've basically just kind of like they've left the shutters down. They haven't let anybody see it. Madness. Yeah, VJ's saying so many of them don't have big enough picks. I can't believe, like, you just it seems obvious, doesn't it? It seems obvious, but some of them are terrible. Alex is saying, which game system do you think has the best undead necromancy type models? You know what? I still quite like Mantic's ghouls and skeletons and their zombies. I quite like that kind of stuff, but I would say that the full range probably isn't great, but I do like those for like core troops. I'm not sure when it comes to kind of like necromancy stuff. I'd be honest and say actually GW do that kind of stuff quite well actually. David says, given your recent GW videos, I have to ask, have you tried Mordheim or Blood Bowl? I've never cared most of GWs, but Mordheim and Blood Bowl are such fun games. Mordheim I've never played, mate. Hello, by the way, David. Mordheim I've never played. It wasn't a game that was out and about when I was kind of getting into miniature games. By the time I got into miniature gaming, Mordheim was already a distant memory, and I've never ever had the opportunity to play it. Blood Bowl, not a fan of, mate, if I'm perfectly honest. I think it's quite an unfun experience. I find it a bit of it's a game that promotes negative player experience in terms of my way of playing is to stop you playing. And most games are not like that. I think Blood Bowl is very much a game that is designed around trying to stop your opponent from playing. Blitz Bowl, on the other hand, I'm a big fan of, and it has a completely different game mechanic. So I'm not in any stretch of the imagination anti-GW. I quite like Warcry, for example. I've enjoyed playing Underworlds in the past. I've enjoyed playing Kill Team in the past. So I'm not like kind of against their games. But yeah, I'm not a fan of Blood Bowl, mate. Let's have a look. Discourse says collecting is the third biggest part of the hobby according to the Great Gaming Survey. Yes, you're not wrong. And Bushido looked great at UK Games Expo. I got talked into the game there. I've heard. It was weird when Bushido the first edition came out. It seemed to be everywhere. It seemed to be on everyone's lips, and everyone was talking about how good it was. Then when second edition came out, everyone was saying, "Oh, how good second edition is," and then it just seemed to disappear. And I've heard nothing about it. And I know we've had the pandemic and stuff, but I've heard about loads of other games in that time. Like Moonstone seemed to kind of like get their message out through the pandemic and stuff. Bushido just seems to be a game that just does not get talked about, and I don't know why. Johnny saying Guild Ball is better than free. Guild Ball was a decent game as well, but again, I think it suffered from a very competitive play experience. I think Blood Bowl suffers from the same thing, if I'm honest. Jess is saying Oathmark and Northstar do nice plastic undead kits. I've not seen them, mate. And David saying Frostgrave is just as fun as Mordheim, very similar. Okay. And Jim says collecting stuff is what happens when your plastic pile of shame turns into a stack of pride. I think some people just enjoy buying stuff. Like there's stuff I've bought that I've not done anything with. But I don't really want to sell it because it's quite nice to just, sometimes it's nice to just go and get the book out and read through the book, or maybe I'll sit and build some of the miniatures sometime, or maybe I've sat and painted them, and I just kind of want to, I like to kind of like set the table up a little bit and like, you know, not even play the game kind of thing. So there is a collecting aspect to the hobby that I definitely can appreciate. Scanner Bartley says Drowned Earth, anybody into it? I've got quite a bit of Drowned Earth miniatures, mate. I've played it a little bit. Not something I've played a lot of, but I do like it. I think it's a really fun and interesting system, especially with the 2d10 dice system, with the kind of achieved it and nailed it method. Bruce is saying he's more of a fan of 5 Leagues from the Borderlands than Frostgrave. Paolo's saying funny that historics are just mentioned as a side note. People really are into fantasy. I don't think it's that, mate. It's more they're mentioned as a side note by me because I'm not really into historical stuff. So I don't think it's a case of people are into fantasy. I think it's probably more a case of I'm not really into historical stuff. Therefore, the people that watch my stuff are probably not necessarily into historical stuff either. They might be, but like they're not coming to me for historical gaming kind of stuff. That's what I mean. Jim says Dreadball is the only fun tabletop sports game I've played. Yeah, I like Dreadball. I just wish the miniatures were a little bit better quality. Tony says he has some GW minis, but they're not the only kid on the block. There's loads of exciting and really interesting minis out there. I'm more selective about which GWs I buy. Yeah, I'll be honest, apart from buying Cursed City a while ago, I've not bought anything else in quite some time when it comes to GW. They do make nice stuff. I'm not denying it. It's just I've never felt the need to go and buy it because the other games that I play also have fantastic miniatures and I'm much more interested in them. Double Dip says, have you played Rumble Slam? I haven't yet, but my mate just purchased it and I've bought some Undead Mexicans. I have played it, mate. Fun little game, really cool, not difficult to play. Definitely, like, it's not like a kind of super competitive thing. It's the kind of thing where you kind of, you have a couple of beers and have a laugh over it kind of thing. Ben saying, check out Twisted by Demented Games, amazing steampunk skirmish games. Yeah, somebody who chatted about, mentioned about that before, mate. Not something I'm massively aware of. I have heard of it and I have seen some of the minis, but I don't know anything at all about the game. Robert says, my biggest commission client is just a collector. He loves mini but doesn't really play or anything. I've got a friend who's a commission painter and he has a client over in Australia who basically just commissions him to paint the models that he likes the look of. He doesn't play, doesn't paint, just has plenty of money and likes how he paints. He is a really good painter. Like, he's a Golden Demon winner and I'm sure he's not very cheap either. But yeah, he just paints and sends his stuff over to Australia from the UK and hopes to get there in one piece kind of thing. Scanner Bartley saying, honestly, with regard to historical, I struggle a little with the idea of making a lot of people dying into something fun. If something is clearly fiction, I can get into it easier. I do understand that kind of way of thinking as well, mate, if I'm honest. James says, when are you getting into Fortnite streaming? I've finished all the comedy on Netflix. Oh my god, there's not enough kind of money in the world that would make me want to play Fortnite, let alone stream it, mate. VG saying, yeah, same as Rivenstone. Yeah, I don't know a lot about Rivenstone, mate, other than the fact that I'd seen everybody was talking about it for a while. Because maybe they were all getting paid to talk about it. Mark Watson says, the problem with historicals when it comes to models is they're a bit samey. I've just put together a box of Victrix Grenadier with slightly different facial hair. Yeah, there is an element of that, mate. There is. Like, if you're painting an army, like a bolt action army or something like that, there is definitely an element of its variations on a uniformed human soldier type thing. It's why I kind of prefer kind of sci-fi, fantasy, steampunk, that kind of stuff, like brighter colours, more interesting, flamboyant minis, over the top type stuff, things that like are not realistic, if you like. And Clyde says that what I loved about Malifaux, lots of variation, 100%, yeah, 100%. VG says money talks, baby. I tell you what, mate, it doesn't talk that much to me. I'll be honest, I'm a bit long in the tooth now. I'd much rather just do what I enjoy. But yeah, Fortnite's not my kind of game, mate. I've been playing a little bit of video games recently. I've been playing a bit of Ghost of Tsushima. I've been playing a little bit of Guardians of the Galaxy. What else have I been playing? I've just downloaded that new Stray as well on PS5. Haven't played it yet, but I have downloaded it. So yeah, I've been playing a little bit of video games. James says, turns out that uniforms are a bit uniform. You're not wrong, mate. Well, folks, I think I'm going to kind of call it a night there. I streamed a bit longer than I normally do. We've had good numbers in tonight. There's been a good gang in. What have we? What was our? Where did we peak at tonight? We had about 140 in earlier on. That's pretty cool. We've kept over 100 all night. Not bad at all for a nice stream. And yeah, Jim's saying Guardians of the Galaxy is fantastic. Yeah, I quite enjoy that game. And Paul says, you like sci-fi over historicals because they're more flamboyant. Let me tell you about Napoleonics. Yeah, I'm not really into Napoleonics. They're flamboyant, but they're all still just human soldiers. There's no monsters. There's no creatures climbing out of the back of Napoleonics. And VJ says, got to move Blinky over near the lamp. Can't see him behind you. I will do, mate. Well, I'm more... There he is, by the way. Let me go. I'm more worried about him getting set fight to by the candle, mate, if I'm honest. And James is saying, yes, Stray is meant to be good. It looks pretty cool, mate. It looks pretty cool. So yeah, I think I might play a bit of that at the weekend. And Wayne says, super topic, Andy, the night and the night all. Oh, sorry. Super topic, Andy, the night all. Yes, thank you. And Silver Bayonet, Napoleonics and Monsters. that explains what it is now then. Somebody answered that question. Right, folks. I will. I should have another video coming this week. There's something I was working on last week but didn't get it finished in time. I've obviously got the little one on school holidays now, so I'm trying to balance childcare and doing my work in the evenings and things. But I'll try and get that finished for this week. Hopefully it's an interesting video and it's a bit of fun as well. And looking again at wider kind of the world outside of Warhammer. So we'll get onto that one next week. Don't forget, this is the last week for the Other Side painting challenge. Have your submissions in by Sunday. We'll be chatting about them next Monday. And was there something else I wanted to say? Yeah, one last thing as well, while we've still got some decent numbers in. If you didn't see any of the UFC at the weekend, Paddy the Baddy was one of the fighters who won. And he unfortunately kind of had a little bit of a sad story at the end of his fight, where he'd lost a friend to suicide. He said he woke up on Friday morning and basically had a message that basically said one of his friends had kind of taken his own life. And he had a bit of a heartfelt message about kind of, like, don't never be too tough. Like, always make sure you reach out, speak to somebody if you're feeling low and all that kind of stuff. And I thought it was quite inspiring, the fact that he just won his UFC fight, and that was what he was using his platform for. And I guess I just wanted to kind of echo that message here as well. There's a lot of guys here in these chats. There's a lot of folks who kind of are quite isolated or maybe don't mix with people very often, maybe feeling a bit low and that kind of stuff. Never, ever, never feel like you're on your own. There's a whole community of folks out there when it comes to doing stuff like this. There's over 100 people in the chat tonight. There was 140 at one point. You're never on your own. If anybody ever feels that like things have got that bad, please speak up and reach out. You just need to get that kind of stuff off your shoulders, and kind of a problem shared is a problem half. I would hate to think that anybody out there would ever kind of sort of feel like that. But if you ever do, make sure you reach out. Okay, folks, speak to somebody. All right, if that just gets through to one person, then it's one person that's been helped. So yes, take care, everybody. Look after yourselves. I'll let you know when the new video comes up this week, and I will see you next Monday. Bye, folks.